please welcome my guest for this evening, Ashton.
Hello.
Hello, Ashton. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great and so happy to have you here this evening. And like I was saying, happy to have the pit crew in here as well. They're all jamming in chat and take the wheel for us, folks. So, yes,
I see everybody. Hi, Pit Crew.
obviously, most of the folks here are already familiar with you, but for anyone who might not be, if you could introduce yourself.
Of course. Hello, everybody. My name is Ashton Marten, and I'm the roller rodent race queen of Vtuber Racing on Twitch.tv. And welcome to Vtuber Talk.
Yay! And in addition to being the roller race queen, you are also an aspiring idol, and you just announced your first concert, actually, which is going to be for your first anniversary just about 10 days from now, 11 days from now.
Yes. My anniversary, I think, is 11 days, but the concert is 10 days away, and it is partially to celebrate my anniversary and partially because I feel like it's time. I'm an idol.
Because if memory serves, you've done some karaoke before, but never a full production concert.
Oh yeah, and I don't know if I've been calling it a live, similar to Hololive and Niji Sanji's concerts, but I don't know if I've really made it clear just how much I'm trying to emulate those. It is not just a karaoke. I love doing karaoke. It is not just karaoke. It is seriously a live, full indie VTuber live concert. So I'm very excited for it.
And folks that have been paying attention, you've actually, in a way, teased certain elements that you've shown off your 3D model. I remember seeing a tweet from you that had your 3D model on what, in retrospect, sort of looks like a stage, or at least, the foundation of a stage. That at the time I was just like, oh, that's nice. She has herself in 3D space on a little platform. And as soon as you announced 3D Live, I was like, oh, that was her testing things out.
I got caught.
How long have you been planning it?
Oh gosh, I don't think it's an understatement to say that probably the day I debuted, I started thinking about it, because in my debut stream, actually, one of my long-term goals was to have a live concert, and I've just always wanted to be an idol. I've always kind of liked them, and it's in real life too, outside of the 2D realm. Race queens kind of are idols sometimes, gravure models, idols, they tend to be in that sort of realm of entertainment. So for me to be an idol is not so far-fetched. Maybe I'm going backwards, but yeah. I've wanted this for a long time, but I think I've been actively planning and thinking about it for 10 months.
Yeah, it sounds about right. That for me, my big anniversary thing, I do a anniversary charity marathon, and it is 24 hours over 2 days, so 12 hours each day. I invite all my guests back, so spoiler alert, you're going to be getting an invite in about December for a January event, but that I always have the early rumblings of concepts in my head. Well, after the first one, the rumblings are immediately in my head of, okay, what can I do for next year? How do I want to change things? What would I want to do for maybe a promo video? And the idea for the first one occurred probably a good 6-7 months prior. So I very much identify with the, having the big plan and just letting the idea stew about for a bit, but also just putting it all into place and actually doing the prep work. And obviously, as you get closer, the prep work is going to ramp up quite a bit. But I've always found it best to start thinking about things early. And even if you're not necessarily working on it every single day, 7 months in advance, just, oh, I had a random idea, let's write this down. Or, oh, I have a sudden, fit of inspiration, let's do a little bit of prep work right now. And that it's always exciting to then see that idea really, really come together. And I'm really excited to see your live. That it sounds like it's going to be very special.
Thank you. I even if it doesn't go as super well or exactly how I want it to go, I think it will be special regardless. Yeah, I know that feeling of constantly thinking about it, even if it's a long time away. I have kind of an obsessive personality when it comes to that, and so I think once I get inspired by something, or maybe I have a vacation in 6 months, I'll like spend a whole week, all of my free time thinking like, all right, where should we go? I have to look at every single place in this city to make sure that I'm looking at all the good restaurants so that I don't miss anything the first time that I go. I'm that type of person. So when I want, I finally was like, okay, I think I can actually do this concert thing. I was like, all right, let's get this all down, put pen to paper, and write down everything I need. That was like 10 months ago. And here we are. Although, even if you start super early like that, I find myself always like rushing. Like once it gets to the end, maybe it's partially because of the fact that I've never done something like this before. But like, man, I think I'm still kind of rushing to make that deadline, even though I've spent all this time planning and getting stuff done.
That's how it usually goes for any big production, especially the first time that you do it. That you obviously have the ideas and have the concepts, but sometimes you, along the way, realize, oh, I hadn't really thought about this particular angle and obviously need to take care of it. And that's just because it is that first time around. But this also is that experience that nobody, there's the first time for everything. And that for the next time, you will have that knowledge from the get-go. Okay, I know, I'm going to need to plan this one out, and this took longer than I expected, so let's start that a little bit earlier, or that was pretty easy, so I can push that one a little bit later, and that's just part of the learning process.
Yep. Unfortunately, it's like a hard lesson to learn, because then you get stuck in this like crunch moment. But like you said, hopefully I won't do it again, although I'm not that type of person historically. I used to cosplay, and at the con crunch, you never stop doing it.
I say this
You
as someone who has never been a cosplayer but has many cosplayer friends. At least from the third-party perspective that I have had, this seems like a universal truth.
That's true. Yeah. Every single time you're in like the middle of it, 3 days out from a con, up at 4 a.m., and you're like, I'm never doing this shit again.
Never
And
again
yet,
until the next time.
then yet 6 months later, it's like, ah, why am I doing this again? Hopefully, it won't be that bad with my future lives. And yes, there will be future lives. I'm not just gonna one and done. That's why it's called the first Chinchill Live. I guess I should have specified the name and plugged it a little more. So it's going to be my first live concert called Glory with a little music note at the end. And I cannot tell you what it means. I mean, one might be able to like glean some ideas from like the context clues about why I named it that. But yes, it's called Glory, and it's my first Chinchill Live, and I'm trying to figure out when would be like a good time to do another. 6 months, my birthday, I don't think, because my birthday is August 18th. Coincidentally, it's 3 months exactly to the day from when I debuted. So like from my anniversary to my birthday to my 6-month anniversary last year, it was like constant busy, constant planning of events. And then it's like from the 6-month mark to the year mark, it's a little bit of like a lull. So maybe I should try and plan 6-month, 1.5 year mark. That's not really like a good, milestone to celebrate. I'll have to think more about it. But there will be a second Chinchill Live, and third, and fourth, hopefully. I may get tired after that. I don't know.
And of course, there's always that balance of it just riding the wave of inspiration, but also making sure you don't burn yourself out.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
For
yeah.
this one, like you were mentioning, you've been doing the full-on branding, that this isn't just, oh, it's the first in July, but you actually have the title, you have the logo. For folks that are Idol fans, or even if you aren't a fan of Idols, that if you have a basic familiarity, that it is neat to see all these different pieces coming together that does go beyond simply just a concert, that's really making it that full production and experience. And I'm very excited to see where yours goes, like I said, and just we're still in that time where, while 3D models are certainly much, much more accessible than they had been in the past, and that being able to create and render 3D spaces is now something that's viable for folks that are not being backed by a large corporation, a large agency, that it is still something that takes a lot of that heavy lifting and effort, that you have to build out something in Unity or whatever space you are building, that
Definitely.
there aren't, you can download some very generic assets if you want to just start VTubing with a stock model. You can download some generic assets. I have to imagine there's probably some generic environmental things that you can get for Unity or for whatever you are creating the space. And actually, are you okay with saying what you are using to create this space?
So I think this isn't too much of a spoiler because it's kind of like an unfortunate circumstance more than anything. And you're right, like building in Unity is like the ideal for something like this. However, uh, it was actually quite difficult to find somebody to make a custom world for me because I really truly don't know how to do that sort of stuff. And there's so many like light effects that are difficult to control. So this concert is in VR chat. I've done this entirely in VR chat. I have full body tracking, and my model was is in VR chat already. And so because of that, VR chat has like a lot more functionality than it used to. Also, there's some really cool like shaders, and there's some really cool light effects, and I think you guys will all be able to see that during my live. But yeah, it was kind of an unfortunate circumstance where like I was not able to find somebody to create a world for me that was custom for Unity, and so I ended up falling back on VR chat. And as a result, it won't be like super crisp the way that other 3D VTubers, gosh, like Code Miko, for example. Like it's not gonna look like
If
Code
you're comparing
Miko.
yourself to Code Miko, that's never going to be a good,
yeah,
litmus tester
yeah,
comparison.
yeah. That's a lot of tech on her end, but yeah, it's not gonna look like that, unfortunately. But I think it gets kind of close, especially with the tech that I did use. I feel like, man, it's crazy. Like the amount of, although it's very much expensive, and that is like a big hurdle to jump over. There is so much stuff on the market now just for consumers to use to do motion capture, not to like a professional degree, but like there's gloves you can get that track your fingers, that you don't have to use like the that, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the name. Oh, controllers. Controllers are really unwieldy in VR. And even if you don't want to like dish out that much money for like the finger trackers, you can still get like Valve Index controllers, and those control your fingers. Like they control your finger movement individually. It's a little bit awkward. It's not like super hyper accurate, but it's quite accurate. It's interesting how much of like a Wild West space VR is. It's like constantly changing and updating. And an unfortunate side of that is actually that it's kind of difficult to like find any like definitive fixes if you're not like super tech savvy, if you do run into issues.
Mm.
But as a result of like all this constantly updating tech, it really like opens up a whole new world of possibilities for consumers. I'm on the consumer level. It's like you said about like it's we're finally in a space where it's difficult, but you can do it. You can create something like this even if you're not backed by a company that has like $10,000 to spend on like motion capture cameras.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 3D and this type of full body tracking naturally is lagging a little bit behind 2D tracking, and that just I still say that VTubing as a whole is in the Wild West. That it feels like it's been here forever now, but I very much
Definitely.
look
I agree.
to the like we were saying, consumer viability of VTubing as sort of the beginning, and I usually peg that around 2019ish, like mid 2019, because obviously you have Kizuna Ai and some other VTubers as far back as 2016, but that's when you have that $10,000 investment required. You're going to need really expensive, difficult to get hardware and
Mhm.
software, but that now we have all this tech that you can just, you can get VTube Studio for $15. You can download some stock models. You can do some customizations, or you can just be a PNG tuber, and that you can have that all set up relatively easy and on a shoestring budget. And while the barrier to entry has come down drastically in the 3D space, that it is naturally still going to be that level of increased complexity. And
Definitely.
even so, I expect that in the next year or two, that it will continue to lower and lower, and that naturally that feels like the next logical progression for a lot of content, not just Unity, VR chat, but full-on customized spaces. That is going to be interesting. I'm expecting that somebody, you know, whether it be VTube Studio branching out or whether it be somebody for Unity, that, the whole concept of the metaverse, somebody developing easy UI for creating 3D spaces, that think Minecraft or Sims UI, but in that 3D space of, okay, I can import an asset for a wall and just go click, 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 and I've created a room.
I think that's
Uh,
a really interesting idea, specifically like Sims VR. I had never thought of that. That would be like the next step, right? In Sims. I think that would be, and you could, extrapolate it to like making these rooms and worlds, like you say. Like that would probably be a crazy big step.
yeah, and yet I don't think it's actually that far off, because conceptually we already have a lot of these things, even if it's not, like I said, sort of UI friendly, and if it's not in a centralized program yet. But I'm sure that somebody somewhere is already working on something like this, and it's just going to be a question of who's first to market, where and when. That it feels pretty much like an inevitability to me, but like I said, it could be several years off, but I'd be willing to bet within 5 years easily, probably within 3.
Definitely. Although that kind of reminds me of, I think I wasn't able to say exactly what I meant earlier, but another issue that comes with that, as amazing as it is to have like all these creators, and this is why it kind of feels like it's the Wild West. You have all these creators doing all these cool, like boundary breaking things, but the problem is that like they end up being like small projects, and as a result you have like such a limited literature on like how to
Mm-hmm.
cross over. Like, so I would say that like the 3D space is like by far and away way more developed than like the VTuber space, even though VTubing has like all these like um cool programs, and it's getting more and more developed like by the month. But it's just that there's no overlap. So 3D VTubers are like really limited. Like, so yeah, I'm not sure how to describe it properly. Basically, it's like I think that like the gap hasn't been bridged yet with the 3D VTubing space for the consumer level,
Yeah,
and I think you hit that on the head earlier.
yeah,
Like
that
it's
we've
almost
essentially
there, but
that
we
we've
got
had a
some
lot of
time.
parallel development, perhaps, of,
Hmm.
3D space by non-VTuber products and concepts, and that uh, just there is that slight separation of usability for VTubers versus other types of programs and
Yeah.
other people who aren't also operating their own models in that 3D space that they are creating. So that's a really interesting observation. I see exactly what you mean.
Yeah, it's that crossover that's difficult. I mean, I think it's partially due to the fact it's like the double-edged sword of like, VR isn't really like owned by one specific company. So basically anybody can write any programs that they so desire. But as a result, there's no like centralized place to get information. It's all just like hidden in Discords or hidden in like Reddit replies. It's quite difficult as a result, but that might be something that would be quite useful going forward, to have like a 3D VTuber like resource on like how to set up like Beat Saber. That was something that I was really struggling with. And it's not that like people don't stream Beat Saber all the time. It's just that finding information like as a VTuber is like quite somewhat difficult.
Yeah,
And
that type of information hub.
yeah, there's like no hub for that sort of
Yeah.
thing. Whereas I feel like there is at least some hubs for information for 2D now, just because there's been such a crazy demand for it. But I would really like to go back to 3D as like a community, because I got into VTubers not like as a whole, right? But I got into VTubing when it was just like short form videos on YouTube and stuff. And I would like to see that come back. You know, we're already kind of seeing that with like clips being so popular on YouTube and then like YouTube shorts and stuff, but with 2D, I think it would be fun if we like kind of had like a return to form as a community and like with 3D becoming more accessible for indie VTubers, you can go back to that short form style, back to the roots of VTubing. And I've only ever noticed this now that I'm like looking into 3D stuff myself. But like, man, like all back then, the VTubers that use 3D, like Kizuna Ai and Kaguya Luna, and gosh, there's like, I think Asano Ruri is her name. She's a ninja VTuber. They are all backed by like companies, and it makes sense why. Because they all use like $10,000 to $13,000 mocap equipment. Like a lot of these 3D VTubers that even back then, like in 2019 and prior, like they were using some expensive, inaccessible equipment. So if we
Hmm.
are able to make it more accessible and we can have a sort of return to form, I would really, really like that. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I guess thinking about the idea of a centralized hub, I would probably say that at this point, YouTube is the closest thing that we have to that. Of just that if you look up things that's probably where you're going to find videos, and that's where a lot of folks learn to do things like rigging because
Mm-hmm.
rewind the clocks 3-4 years, same situation that we have right now with the 3D space for model rigging, and all these people want to get into VTubing, but there's a precious few amount of people who know how to use rigging software, and that while we have some really talented artists, the concept of cutting up the model and then actually doing all the facial rigging, people had to look up these demos on YouTube frequently that were not going to be in English and more or less teach themselves. But now we have this really thriving ecosystem with a whole bunch of incredibly talented riggers that just become more talented by the month. And that if you're looking to get into that, there's this just so many demos and how-to guides on YouTube. And my guess is that, barring a specialty website, that's probably what's going to end up happening with 3D as well.
Yeah, probably. And I wholly agree with you. And I'm not trying to play devil's advocate, but then there's the other issue of this is true of like basically everything on the internet though, right? Although I think it's difficult specifically in these tinier communities just because like information rolls over so quickly. There's so many outdated videos too, and that's
Oh,
the
you are not
problem.
wrong about that. You are not wrong about that.
That's the worst. It's like it's amazing that you'll have like a step-by-step visual video that somebody took the time out of their day to create to show you something, and it's like sometimes it's like completely moot within 3 months, and
Yeah,
it's
the
just the
UI has
worst.
been completely overhauled in that
Mhm.
program and it looks nothing like it used to, or they made some updates and the updates may have been very positive and, correct from a developmental standpoint, but now you need to wait for more folks to create new and current how-to guides for that, in that it's sort of uh, that type of a treadmill of information.
Exactly. And I think a comparison might be like people got really mad when Blender updated because it looked totally different. Um, but Blender is like made by like a large company and has a website that has a dedicated FAQ section, whereas like when some smaller apps update that are specifically for use with VTubers, like there's really no like place to have a Q&A other than like maybe like sending a tweet out into the void on Twitter or like DMing the programmer themselves.
Hmm.
It's like it's a I want it to be like to have like the backing of like a larger company, but I also don't want VTubing to have like the restrictions that come with that though. There's like positives and negatives
Yeah.
to growing. But we'll have to see. I mean, it doesn't even really seem like any like large company is even really interested in investing in the VTuber space, except for like Live 2D. But then again, the issue with Live 2D is like if there is a Q&A part, it's all Japanese, so
Mm,
it's hard having like this community that's it's both amazing and difficult. That's hard having that that makes this. Let me start that sentence over. It's both amazing and hard having a community that is like so widespread throughout the world in so many different languages.
yeah, for sure. And that, we do get the information eventually, but it definitely is one that sort of lags a little bit and takes time to develop. but I'm very confident we will get there.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, that this train probably won't stop. I mean, what is the stuff that people say on Twitter, like VTubing is dying or VTubing is
Oh no,
oversaturated? It's like
this is not a
kind of
fad. This is that what's going to happen, in my opinion, is that VTubing is going to just become so ubiquitous that it's probably going to, at some point, lose the moniker of VTubing because it's just going to be someone's going to find some other more generic terminology because at its heart, VTubing is just content creation with a model instead of a face cam, and
yeah,
that
yeah.
obviously VTubing as a term makes perfect sense, and I could see a world where it does maintain, but it's going to be interesting to see once VTubing hits true public consciousness, because we aren't there quite yet. That when you can go to the grocery store and the person that is, ringing up your groceries knows what a VTuber is or knows what VTubing is, that's what I consider sort of public consciousness, and we are not there yet. We are
Hmm.
close. That there have been a lot that have been able to get significant notoriety. Mori Calliope is being represented by Universal Music Group, the same label that takes care of Taylor Swift. Uh, you know, Galgura has been on billboards in Japan. And I feel like Japan, it's difficult to say because I don't live in Japan, but I feel like they are basically there in terms of public consciousness,
Yeah, they are.
but outside of Japan, not there yet. And what happens once we reach that public consciousness and that more people will end up using this? Because frankly, there's a lot of people that have been VTubers and not realize it. That if you ever
Hmm.
used, what was that chat?
Face rig
Face rig,
or
thank you. Yeah. That there were folks using those, like dinosaur or cat things in video calls that, technically that's VTubing, and that they understand the concept. It's just not something that they understand from a content creation standpoint. And it'll be where and when we get to that. But once we hit that public consciousness level, that's when I suspect that more companies are going to start paying much more attention.
I agree. Yeah, I back to the whole like, there's gonna be a different word. I would actually really like if there was a different word for VTubing because, you know, Kizuna Ai is the one who coined the term VTuber, but VTuber isn't like all encompassing because Niji Sanji people call themselves livers. They're livers with Niji Sanji, and so like having a different terminology like makes complete sense. I don't know what it could possibly be, but I think something the V makes sense, you know, virtual.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that would be really interesting to just have like a new term. And I think a new term might actually kind of aid in that whole like joining the public consciousness thing. Just because VTuber kind of has like a loaded history to it, whereas like a new term might be fresh, easier
Yeah.
to more palatable, I guess. I don't know. But again, oh gosh, what was the other thing that I had two thoughts? Oh, it was about the public consciousness thing. I've never been to Japan, but I'm also like a longtime VTuber fan, and I've also been a longtime fan of Niji Sanji Japan. It is probably not. I can't like entirely verify this claim. Like I said, I've never been to Japan, but from what I understand, from what I read on the internet from Japanese fans and English-speaking fans who can read Japanese, truly like because anime is like so like in the culture in Japan, like it's cartoons, but it's also like not cartoons in the same way that it is in America. Anime is just like something you watch even as an adult. Like there are plenty of adults
Mhm.
that are like, I like this anime. Anime is just a thing in Japan. So being a VTuber represented by like an anime avatar is like something that is really not outlandish the way that it might be in the West because of that whole like
That's a
stigma with how like cartoons are for kids. So like really truly like in Japan, the Niji Sanji livers are like just streamers. That's why they're so big, partially. Like they it's just a group of streamers. And some of them have like this kayfabe of like their characters and stuff, and that might turn people away. But it's the fact that they're anime means like almost nothing in Japan, the way that it does in America and the West.
You just hit like three different points that I completely agree with on the head of without getting into a giant rant that I could, and we might later anyways, of you're absolutely right that in Japan, animation does not have the stigma that it has in the West. That in the West, animation is largely considered juvenile, and that it is a trend that we have been actively bucking over the past 10, 15 years. But even to this day, the vast majority of animation that is produced in the West is either for children or it is comedy. That there is very little
Exactly.
drama or just something that isn't considered silly or for children. And that's one of the inherent differences of just Western and Japanese culture, that in Japan, animation is considered equal ground, equal worthiness of media and story and just artistic creation. And that's why you have these shows that, if they were made in the West, would likely be either live action or, not animated as we have them. And, Ray Jaggy says Rick and Morty. Well, I consider Rick and Morty, that's a comedy. That's it's something that is going to be for, it's like The Simpsons, it's like South Park. And that's not to say they're bad shows. There's been incredible pieces of Western animation. There are the exceptions to the rules, certainly. But it's mostly that you're going to have the occasional great exception, whereas every season you're going to get something from every possible genre in animated form coming out of Japan. And
Yeah, they just ultimately serve very different purposes in
Yeah.
different places. That's why I think it will be difficult for the general consciousness to accept VTubing. I would really like it, but I think
and I
I'd have
hadn't
to. Go
hadn't
ahead.
actually thought about it from that particular angle, that because animation just baseline has greater acceptance and respect, that the concept of somebody streaming using an animated avatar would also have a lower barrier to mental entry, so to speak, than it would in the West. But that makes perfect sense. And I look at it and I get a little frustrated because it's like, oh no, now we have an even higher hurdle, because I think you do have a point there, and I think it's something that we will overcome eventually. But that is a very astute observation of why, obviously the VTubing has its roots in Japan, but that's probably also part and parcel of why it had its start in Japan to begin with.
Exactly. Although, kind of bringing it full circle, I've been thinking about it as we've been talking. I think it also, what might actually help with bringing VTubing to the public consciousness might actually be that return to form with 3D in the West. I feel like even if you're a cartoon character, right? I think 3D kind of is a middle ground between a fully static, only 2D person that looks like an anime character and talks like an anime character versus a face streamer. I think, that's probably why Fillion, I not that she's on, no. Let me rephrase this. I'm not crediting her success to that. It's because she's a talented streamer, but I think that she's more accessible to a general public audience compared to me per se, especially considering my interests. Truly, just because she has this more movement to her. She has a more realistic. She's you can
Similarly,
tell
Code
she's
Miko.
yeah, you could tell she's a person behind it. She's moving in a physical space, and I think that is important to the human brain in a way to make that connection between person and entertainment. Does that make any sense?
Oh, that makes perfect sense, of just like you're saying, that at least removing a degree of separation from something that is, normal 3D human being, of being 3D animation versus 2D animation. And that, instantly my mind goes to Code Miko, who is, hyper realistic, and the idea of 3D just as a whole. One, as a content creator, that means you have access to many more options of just being able to operate in a 3D space. But I think you do have a point there of uh, people in the West just probably being more naturally inclined to want to watch someone who is working in a 3D space because it is that slight,
It's one less degree of
reduced.
separation
Yeah.
between like reality and
Mhm.
VTuber. I
Yeah.
think at the very least.
And that then bring it sort of full circle in this conversation that would suggest that as we continue to see these upgrades and increases in accessibility for 3D content creation and development, that will probably help push VTubing as a whole and help it get some pretty significant ground in the West because, following these two logical points, that's going to be probably, even if we don't know who, where, and when, that it then would follow logically that whatever brings VTubing into Western public consciousness is probably going to be somebody in 3D.
I think that would not be an incorrect statement. I think that makes perfect sense.
We need to
Huh.
write like an academic paper on this, Ashton. Like, that was really good.
We're really brainstorming right now. Dang.
Yeah. Did not expect that, but hey, that's the fun of it all.
I'm just
Uh,
very passionate about VTubing.
Yes.
So.
Winding things a little bit farther back to the beginning, where does your interest in idols originate? That this is similar to VTubing, something that very much has its roots culturally in Japan, but has made its way over to the West. In the West, we don't really have anything that has reached public consciousness, but obviously there are many, many worldwide idol fans. So do you recall at this point what your introduction to idols were?
I don't know. I've always just been really interested. I think I've always had this like childlike interest in being a pop star, like how kids want to be like a singer or an entertainer when they're a kid. And then I think when I saw idols in anime, so I've watched anime for a long time and I've seen a lot of anime, as you know. And it must have been, I feel like I want to say it was the Idol Master that I was like, this is awesome. Like, this is so cool. And it's different from just being a singer like in America. It's different. There's
Yeah, they're
different
very different
cultures.
type of pop stars.
It's cutesier, it's frilly, there's like so much support. It just seemed like such a fun thing. And I'm sure that's exactly what like little girls in Japan think also, and they want to be idols too. Like it's different from just being like a singer. And I think it probably was the Idol Master that really got me into it. But specifically I used to watch like what was it? Nico Nico Doga videos of the Idol Master. So because like the games have these dancing portions, people would take clips of them dancing and then like put different songs to it. And I remember
Oh,
very
I love those
vividly.
accounts of just, that they will take the same sequence, the same level, and just put a different backing song to it every day.
Yeah. And so I think I saw those videos on YouTube. I never really went on Nico Nico Doga at that point. I saw those videos on YouTube because that was a thing back then to like take videos and repost them on YouTube. And I remember thinking like, why isn't this in an anime? And then in 2011, the Idolmaster anime came out, and I was like, yes, this is awesome. And I really liked it. And there's just a lot of idol content back then in general, if I recall correctly. Gosh, what's another thing? Well, Love Live came out around that time, although Love Live is like a different type of idol to me. Like the concept is like not a real thing, like the whole school idol thing. So it wasn't really like magical in the same way that like being a real life pop star was.
Yeah, and
But
you
yeah,
actually
there's.
just that
Go
those
ahead.
two are my introduction to idols, and I think it was in the same order that I initially found Idolmaster. I've been racking my brain trying to recall how I had the introduction, and I just can't remember. It probably came from maybe an AMV or some short video that I never really went to Nico Nico Doga, so it might have been something on YouTube. But however, it wound up that the original Idolmaster anime was my introduction conceptually two Japanese idols, and that at first I had to sort of just through the exposure of the show come to learn of and understand some pretty unique concepts for Japanese idols of, all right, the concept of you have different pen-like colors for each member and that
Mm-hmm.
everybody has the different merch. But for me, what attracted me to Idolmaster is I love stuff, surprise, surprise. The guy that runs a talk show is interested in, show running and production and the business portion of it all. And that certainly Idolmaster is not going to give you a accurate portrayal of the idol industry and business. And I have never had any delusions about that, but that they follow these characters on their arc from being, this little startup company aspiring idols, and then you have season 2
Mm-hmm.
where they're really actually starting to make it, that they've had their first big concert, and then sort of their diverging paths as professionals, and that really fascinated me. Plus, they also just
Right?
had
Is it
very
good?
good, yeah, and they just had very good, unique characters, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. And then you have Love Live, which I think Idolmaster walked so Love Live could run in the West. That I think Love Live is what really unlocked the Western idol market. And like you
Definitely.
said, they're very different. That the concept of school idols and, this is a couple of girls that are just trying to, save their school and go through this competition is pretty wildly different. But it also had its own types of drama that Idolmaster didn't have. And I think they complemented each other very nicely and sort of really helped give rise to idol popularity in the West, because I feel like after those couple of years, 2011, 2014, that you started seeing many, many more reaching the West.
Yeah, definitely. And also, I see that Returner 7 said IRL idols boomed around that time too. That was another thing. I think just like being interested in like anime idols and also like being on like Japanese YouTube at the time, I was exposed to just actual real life idols. So I'm a big fan of like Hello Project. I don't know if you know who they are. Running Musume, like AKB, and yeah, it kind of just went hand in hand with that. And so I like both the anime idols and these real life idols. And I think that's probably why I like Idolmaster more than Love Live. It's like you said, like it's not like 100% accurate, but I think that like for an anime that's like about cute girls, I think Idolmaster really did like kind of give like a little peek behind the curtain, at least when it came to like being a producer and like wrangling talents and like diverging paths and careers. And like I just thought that that is so compelling and
Hmm.
fun, on top of the fact that like that's why I like the Idolmaster specifically, on top of the fact that I already liked idols from this like history of watching them on YouTube and learning the dances. And I think Love Live kind of is more in line with this. I definitely think Love Live helped push this type of anime that's like they sing and dance, but they're idols in like a really loose sense, and they sing and dance because singing and dancing is fun to watch more than anything else. Kind of similar to like Aikatsu or other children's shows at the time, like Pretty Rhythm, which is earlier than both of those. They're about like this childlike idea of like being an idol, but mostly it's just about like the imaginary world of like it's fun to like dance and be cheered for and sing and be cheered for. And I think Love Live kind of taps into that, but that's because I think like the actual performance parts of Love Live are kind of like weirdly like separate from the actual like plot. When you see these, you never really see people in like an audience in the performance parts of
Yeah,
like
you also have the thing of, especially in early Love Live, that the performances were all very blatantly CG,
yeah,
and
exactly.
they were well done CG, to be fair. But it was always, that little bit of jarring going from 2D to 3D like that.
It's
And
uncanny.
yeah, and as you were talking, I'm curious about what you think of this analogy that I just thought of. Love Live is the shonen of the idol genre.
Yeah, I can imagine that like not to say that Love Live doesn't have drama, isn't it deep, but I almost feel like it's very much like gung ho, we'll always bounce back. There's
Yeah.
drama, but like what's going to happen at the
Mm-hmm.
end.
Yes.
I feel like that's pretty apt of like things happen in a lighthearted way for the most part.
Yeah, and that, it's tailored slightly toward a younger audience. That's not to say an immature audience. That's not to say that it doesn't have good writing and good drama, but that it is taking on a more, I'm not sure if fantastical is the proper term here, but that it's much more separated from reality than you're going to
Yeah,
have in other shows.
yeah. I think actually more shows kind of lean towards Love Lives, like separation from reality compared to like Idolmaster. And Idolmaster is not particularly realistic, but like Idolmaster and there's another idol show called Wake Up Girls that like really hyper focus on like how much it sucks.
Yeah, that
So it's
I've
like
heard of that one, haven't seen it, but
I don't watch it. It's like really not worth it. But it's like yeah, I would say that more anime tend towards that.
yeah.
Um,
And on a topical topic, that this season actually we have a show that is delving into the much more realistic side of the idol genre, or sorry, the idol industry. And it's a show that is really actually taken the community by storm, and that's Oshinoko.
Oshinoko? Yeah, yeah. I have some feelings about Oshinoko.
Oh?
Gosh, where do I, where do I begin?
Uh-oh.
I both agree, and also I think that Oshinoko is kind of self-indulgent in a way that I don't particularly agree with. I don't think it's wrong to say that like Oshinoko is realistic. Oshinoko shows like the dark like underbelly of this world or whatever. But I don't know. I think it kind of flip-flops on that at times. Like it talks about how like amazing it is to be an idol, and then also how awful it is to be an idol. And I think perhaps the reason why maybe I'm just like not a cultured enough viewer where like I can't like deal with two opposing topics in the same media at the same time, but I just feel like it's not as well written in that aspect as it could be. But it is like I think it really is capturing like anime fans by storm because it is so different. It is super different, especially when like the majority of people know like Love Live, and Love Live seems more juvenile or saccharine, much more saccharine by comparison to Oshinoko. But that's just my criticisms as somebody who like knows too much or like knows way more than I should.
And that's a very fair observation that it certainly has its moments where it is, really realistic and touching on some very serious topics and some very serious issues that exist in the idol industry and just sort of the public behavior towards not just idols, but towards celebrities in general. But also, you are not wrong that there are other points where it is going to be a lot more lighthearted, it is going to be a lot more fantastical, and that perhaps it doesn't flip-flop, but it spans a much wider spectrum in that there is a level of inconsistency because of that spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah. And it's still
Go on.
I just I bring that up because even if it is, it covers both ends of that spectrum, that it at least ventures occasionally into things closer to into Idolmaster territory than the average idol show.
Yeah, definitely. It's more in the realm of like being realistic. I guess a lot of my gripes with it aren't particularly about like the fact that it is realistic. I think it's the way that it carries itself after that, having that like realistic side. I just feel like personally it's kind of like having its cake and eating it too, or like, telling idol fans like you're all crazy, you believe a lie, blah blah blah. And also being an idol's totally awesome, so you should just forget about that, you little idiots. But maybe I'm like
That that's another really interesting observation that I feel like it's generally saying, yes, there are problems, but there's also a lot of really great things as well. And that there is that duality, quite frankly, of, all right, there are a lot of problems with the IRL idol industry, but people still love idols and that people still want to be idols, and that there is that conflict even in real life where, not everything is sunshine and roses, but
Yeah.
we still love them anyways. And that while we certainly hope to see things be as good as they can be, that in some ways, it is okay, and in other ways, it can sort of be seen as just sort of a bit of a jab of, we are okay with this as a collective, even if we recognize that it isn't good, and that in some level, we have to kind of accept that, at least as it currently stands.
Yeah, and I guess the more that I like try and articulate the thought, I guess the best way I could put it is that like I would like that element in a story, like that duality of like people still yearn for it and yet we know how bad it is. And if they explored that more, but I think perhaps it's like maybe the author's like inclination to write stories in a specific way. I don't believe that it's like as nuanced as it should be, is just my opinion on it. But and I think that's probably like where my like kind of vibe comes from.
Yeah, that you see it starting to venture into that territory and you want it to go farther.
Not even that so much as like I don't want it to go any farther because I don't believe he can write it well enough.
That's fair too.
And I love Kaguya-sama, but I think that like flip-flopping tone works when it's like a rom-com. It's just a bit difficult when it's like about like a real life issue and topic. And I guess I just have some other gripes with Oshinoko in general, where it's like it feels like he gets on his like soapbox randomly, and it's like, okay, cool it, like get off the mic, boo. And then the plot will move like once, his soapbox ends. And so, yeah. I mean, I like the idea of Oshinoko, but sometimes the execution kind of like gets me.
That's totally fair.
This comes up a lot though, because like like you mentioned it, because I like idols and I like realistic idol shows, and like naturally people are going to bring up Oshinoko because that's really big right now.
It is the big thing right now.
Yeah. And then each time I like have to try and say like, well, actually,
this is
that
probably
one...
a rant you've given many times before.
Exactly. And yeah, I guess the more that I give the rant though, the better I'm going to be at arguing my point. So I guess I'm not super mad about it.
It gives you the reps so you can articulate it better.
Yeah.
So while I've seen the original Idolmaster, I haven't seen Cinderella Girls. Is that one that you've seen, and do you have any particular feelings of it versus the original?
I don't like it as much as the original. I think that I've actually had some back and forths with my pit crew about this when I've mentioned it on stream before. I kind of feel like the drama in Cinderella Girls is a little bit more juvenile, but it kind of makes sense that it's juvenile because it's like they're teenage girls, but I just don't find it to be as compelling because I find okay, cover your ears, pit crew, if you don't want to be spoiled on the Idolmaster original anime. I find that the drama in the end of Haruka finding herself in this situation where everybody's leaving her and she knows she should be happy that they're growing, and yet she has these like really like conflicting feelings about the fact that like she still wants everybody to be like unified, and like she clashes with Miki over it. I think that's portrayed in like such a realistic way, because it's like to fight against inevitability is like one of the most difficult like feelings to sit with ever, to want to fight against inevitability. And it's like you can like really feel like, wow, like that is like I see like why she's feeling this way. And I think people can feel that way when they watch Cinderella Girls too, but it just comes off as like less nuanced to me because a lot of the issue is like their insecurity and not being able to do a good job in their group or as the leader of their group. And I think people can relate to that, but it's a little bit more like teenaged, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah, that in the original
I remember being
Idolmaster,
insecure about that, you know. Whereas with Haruka's, it's like, whoa, this is like a like, how do I just? What's the word where it's like doomer? It's kind of more doomer than Cinderella Girls.
a bit more pessimistic, perhaps, or
Gosh,
not
more like a harsh truth of reality rather than like, oh, I'm dealing with some personal insecurities.
a bit more grounded, perhaps.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to put it.
And that in the original Idolmaster, that there are several of the girls who don't have that issue at all, and that they are already looking forward to their next phase, and that, well, it's like, yeah, we're always going to be friends, and we're always going to have these memories together. That they do not have the mental block that Haruka has, and that sort of duality there of. That's part of why she feels like people are leaving her, because she doesn't see them having the same struggles that she has. And it's sort of the question of like, well, wait, does that mean that they didn't care, or that they don't care? And the reconciliation of different mental states, and saying that both of these states are valid and that they are both very human and very understandable, and allowing the characters to ultimately have what is a happy ending, but acknowledge, yeah, there's bittersweet stuff here.
I think that ultimately the culmination of the drama in the original Idolmaster anime and like coming to terms with the inability to control other people is like a lot harder of a pill to swallow than like insecurity. And maybe I'm downplaying what I remember the drama in Cinderella Girls to be, and perhaps because like I don't believe I'm like so wildly insecure as like Mizuki and Mio are, but I just think that like ultimately like you can overcome that with like, and then they do overcome it with like friendship and whatever. Whereas like in the Idolmaster, they do come back together in the end, but it is like, I couldn't possibly have changed this other person because they're their own person and they are going to go on their path and I can't stop them. And I think that like the futility of like, I just can't make other people do what I want is like a much harder pill to swallow than like I'm insecure and like bringing my friends down or something. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I just think that like one is more adult.
Yeah, and it's still one that I feel it's aged very well, that I do point people to it. I've always been a little bit sad that it obviously has stood the test of time. Plenty of people know it, but I do feel it did get a bit buried by Love Live. And that's not to say Love Live's bad, but, it's always just...
They're just so different, you can't compare them.
Yeah.
And the fact that it did get buried is unfortunate because it's like, you'll be like, oh, it's an idol anime, and then people go like, oh, like Love Live, and it's like, no, actually nothing like Love Live.
Sort of, but not really.
In the loosest sense, yes.
They both have girls that sing and dance.
And I think that's where the overlap ends, but yeah.
For the most part, yes. Do you have any favorite IRL idol groups?
For a long time, my favorite group was Cute, Celsius C, Ute. Yeah, they had like a funky name. And they were under Hello Project, and all their music is made by the composer Tsunku. And I really, really liked Cute for a long time, but they disbanded in 2018, I think. And they're all kind of doing their own thing now. But for a long time, they were my favorites.
That's once again, the inevitability, not just for the talents, but for the idol fans, that at least in idol culture of, what has been carried over to VTubing, because VTubing in many ways takes its cues a lot from idol culture, the concept of graduation.
Mm-hmm.
I have my own mini rant on VTubers and graduation. The very TLDR version on that is that I don't think that anybody who isn't part of an agency and loses the rights to their character should use the term graduation, and that folks who decide to stop doing active content creation should use the term hiatus or something else. And that's mostly because I don't like seeing people paint themselves into a corner, and I always worry that, all right, you might have lost a spark, or you might just have different circumstances now and need to stop, and that's fine. But graduation is meant to be something pretty final, and that if you're graduating from a agency, that you are not going to go back to that agency, you will not have access to that model, to that character. Graduation is the appropriate term. But
Mm-hmm.
if you, Ashton, however many years down the road, say, all right, this chapter of my life is done, that you can close that book, put it on the shelf, but that you have the option to pick it back up, that there is nothing legally stopping you from being able to do that. And that I feel more so for the person behind the model than for the fans, that it paints themselves into a corner in a way that I hope most people would not.
I understand that. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think also, at least personally, perhaps it would be like a situation to situation case. Like, I'm not sure. That's hard to say. I think because I'm like such a long time fan, if I like really truly was like, I am done with this, I still might use the term graduate, just because I don't think I'd ever, if I was like really, really sure about it, like I'd never come back to this persona. Perhaps, I guess I tend to agree, is what I'm saying. But if somebody like really, truly does not intend to return to a persona, graduate could still be accurate. But I know that graduation really does have like a loaded like history associated with it.
Yeah, I always
And
just worry that,
it means more when like you like truly, no matter what you do, you can never get that person back.
yeah, and don't get me wrong, I fully understand why people do it, and that I think that most of the time when people use it, that they do at that moment in time think and intend for it to be final.
Hmm.
And maybe it's just how my brain works, of I always want to have as many options as possible, and even if it is just that 1%, 0.5% chance of something that I want to have access to it, and that I mentally am like, I don't think I would ever want to use the term graduation, but at the same time, I can very much sympathize and understand how it has been carried over and pulled from agencies as it has been.
I think you're right. Basically, like it's used a little bit more arbitrarily in the indie space, and it doesn't really make sense that if you're just like done with VTubing, but like, I don't know,
No,
people always think like in finality in short term. If you're done with VTubing, you think like I'm gonna graduate, I'm never gonna come back to this. It doesn't really make sense to like block yourself off from that. I guess the only reason why I might be different is because like that would be like I'm different, lol. But like my brain is so like for posterity reasons. Like if I were to give it up, like I don't think that I could come back even if I wanted to. I think that's the way that I would think of it. But I know a lot of people don't think like that, so it doesn't make sense to use the word graduation. Like I've seen people graduate and then come back like
yeah, and
multiple
that's the thing,
times.
and that's the thing that I worry about. That I've seen some people graduate and then come back, and that sometimes their communities are like, "Well, hey, wait a minute,
We
were you just
warned you, like
were you just playing us here? That were you trying to basically use emotions to basically get something out of the fans?" And that even if that is not the intent, that sometimes that can be the reaction. And I have actually seen in the past year or so an increasing number of people use the term indefinite hiatus. And
mm-hmm.
I've been frankly very happy to see that, because, if content creation is not something you enjoy, if it's not right for you, don't keep doing it. That I think hiatuses, long and short, should be used often, or as often as necessary. And that even if it is an extended hiatus, that please do, step away if you need to for, half a year more, whatever. And that, come back if you feel like it.
I wish that people did use, if they were going to use the term graduation, I wish that they did use it more seriously. So I think that ends up, so your issue with people using graduation is that it's too final. But I think part of my issue with the word indefinite hiatus is also because like that person could never come back, and then you could just leave people constantly
That
waiting.
it
And
could
I
be
think
false
that's
hope.
yeah, that's another issue too.
That's
But
fair.
and I think that like it's because of the fact that like the words have been used incorrectly just from like the get-go, that it's like sort of muddied the waters, and now everybody has like
Yeah.
these new preconceived notions like, oh well, indefinite hiatus means that they'll be back in like a couple months, or indefinite hiatus means that they're dead, they're gone forever, or graduation's like, well, they're gonna be reborn somewhere else or something. Or graduation could mean like, yeah, they're also dead and gone. It's hard because like there is people use terms incorrectly. Hell, you know what this reminds me of? This is just like the folly of man. Like everybody uses terms incorrectly now.
Oh yeah.
Like
yeah.
this reminds me of, I remember when English VTubing was getting really big. It really pissed clippers off because there was a tag that was used. I think it was VTuber EN that was used to post clips of Japanese VTubers speaking English, not speaking English, or with English subtitles, or speaking English. But basically, that was for sharing VTubers who did not speak English with English. And so, but English VTubers ended up like co-opting that hashtag. Yeah, this was years ago now, but I remember it caused a little drama at the time because everyone's like, well, where the hell do we put our
What's the
clips now?
classification here?
Like why did you take over this thing that already had this established background to it? And that that happens with everything.
Yeah,
like,
and at that
words
point we're
change and hashtags change, and it's a little annoying, but like you can't really control other people. This is just like Idolmaster.
Yeah, this is an effective microcosm of the growth of language just as a whole, and the changing meaning of words, and inconsistent terminology, and the associations therein.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, even if there is no perfect terminology, that at the end of the day, I just hope people are happy, and that there's a lot of cool things that have been brought in from the idol community and the idol culture into VTubing. Some of it perhaps is a bit of baggage, but that's most things, that there is the good and the bad.
Exactly. There is good and bad. I guess that makes more sense as an explanation as to why like I probably might use graduation someday, but it would be like totally final if I did that. And it's because I am just truly idol pilled. Like I've been on like the idol side of the world and idol VTuber side for so long that it's like that's just how my brain sees it. And I think that's kind of why I like the term VTuber to describe myself, as opposed to like any new word that might come out. I know that there's been like rumblings of that on Twitter actually, although for the wrong reasons, because people don't want to be associated with like other people who call themselves VTubers. But it's like that happens when you're in a community, right? Like
changing language once again.
Yeah, I like the term VTuber because to me, although I don't apply this to other people because I know that a lot of people just want to be like virtual streamers, like streamers that just use these avatars. To me, after watching Hololive, like, and even Nijisanji, like perhaps I've like misconstrued VTuber to equal like somebody who does these types of events at like concerts and like acts a certain way, when it's really just that like they're corporate that makes them act that way. But regardless, I have this like more rigid idea of like what I want VTubing to be, and it's why like I really hesitate to stream in like a very casual way. I did my first like quote unquote off streams recently when I was playing Tears of the Kingdom, where it was just like I warned everybody like I may not be entertaining today because I'm just streaming and I want to play the games and I want to stream them. Like I might not be like full on like trying to like crack jokes. And although people were saying like you didn't seem all that different, maybe I have this like unwarranted pressure on myself to entertain. But I guess I see VTubing as like specifically like you are entertaining, you're performing, and I don't think that a lot of other people see it that way, besides for like corpos. And I think that's just the way that like I ended up being exposed to VTubers that caused me to think that way.
Yeah, and that's totally natural. That it is a very human thing of your initial exposure to something, your initial impression is going to very much color your both opinions and your concepts, both conscious and unconscious, regarding any given topic.
Mm-hmm. Also, no, I'm not graduating. I don't have any plans to graduate. Ray Jackie mentioned graduating. I have no plans in the near future to do that.
But I'm glad that you've been able to allow yourself that little bit out of your comfort zone to play games and say, all right, I don't need to, even if, folks will disagree and say, oh, you were just as entertaining as always, that you are allowing yourself into that headspace where you are letting yourself relax and just say, I'm going to go with the flow. I'm going to play the game. And if I'm entertaining, great, but I'm not going to necessarily have that active mindset that I usually have.
Yeah.
But at the same time, after having the active mindset for so long, you probably have to give yourself some level of credit here, Ashton. You're probably pretty good about just doing a lot of it unconsciously at this point.
I think so. I think I noticed myself doing that when I was streaming Tears of the Kingdom. It is a little unconscious, although even just giving myself that leeway, like mentally, sort of made me relax a little more. And I think part of the reason why I wanted to allow that is because I love Zelda. Like, we mentioned this during our pre-interview. I love Zelda, and so I wanted to share that with my pit crew when it was coming out, but I didn't want to like ruin the experience for myself. And I'm not trying to say that when I stream it ruins games, but it does make it slightly difficult to absorb it fully the way that one might be able to when you're just like
extra
alone.
Mental bandwidth.
Exactly. And so I was like, I'm not even gonna think about you guys. I'm gonna play my game. And yeah, I think I want to be able to temper that ability a bit more, just because I've noticed that like, and not to say I'm only in this to like get like famous or whatever, but I've noticed that like the most famous people, streamers and VTubers alike, sometimes I'll go on their streams and they aren't doing shit. They're not doing anything. And it's like, I feel like I put this undue pressure on myself to like constantly be on entertaining, and they're just entertaining, like sitting there in silence or going like,
yeah, that
and
some
like,
viewers just want to see people playing games, and that some people have been able to build up their entire brand, not on their personality, but just on their skills for a given game. That if you are a pro League of Legends player or really good at Fortnite, that you don't need to talk much, if at all, if you are good at the game and that you are able, that the gameplay at that point is the entertainment. And yes, you're piloting and people will associate your gameplay with you, but that is you being entertaining in that different way. Whereas, being a just chatting streamer is going to be entertaining, but that is going to fall on you as an entertainer.
Yeah. And I don't think I'll ever get there with games, so I gotta find some other road to that. But yeah, I don't know. It's a dream to be so loved and have such a lovable personality that like I can just chill out with people. That's my next year's dream as a VTuber.
When it comes to Zelda as a whole, what was your first Zelda game?
My first Zelda game was Twilight Princess. I love Twilight Princess so much.
That is one of my personal favorites. It wasn't my first. The first Zelda game I ever played any of was Link's Awakening on the Game Boy. The first Zelda game I ever beat was Wind Waker. Twilight Princess, I'm putting Tears of the Kingdom aside because I haven't beaten it yet. Twilight Princess is one of my two favorite Zelda games. The other being Breath of the Wild. They're wildly different games, to be sure. But until Breath of the Wild, that Twilight Princess was my unquestioned favorite Zelda game.
I think personally, Twilight Princess is underrated.
I very much agree that I don't know why, but it wasn't until several years after the fact that I realized, oh, some folks didn't care for it much, and that, I suppose visually it has a more muted color palette, especially coming off the heels of Wind Waker. But I really enjoyed the overall mechanics, and that for me, and this is something that one of the keys to my heart in media, in storytelling, is how is the ending? What is your finale? And one thing I will say, and I definitely believe this over Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom still pending, the final boss sequence for Twilight Princess is my favorite final boss sequence in gaming, period.
It's so good. It's just so epic. The atmosphere, just everything. I can't really speak for whether or not it's Zelda. I mean, it's Zelda to me, but I know a lot of fans at the time were upset because it was like such a different vibe. Although it's crazy is that everyone was upset when Wind Waker came out too.
Yeah,
because
people were like, oh, this is all cartoony.
Yeah, it sucks. But my gosh, I just think Twilight Princess has like so much artistic value to it. It's just beautiful. I love it. I love Twilight Princess, and I really do think it's underrated because, like, Wind Waker was hated when it was released. It's so popular now. And then, like, Skyward Sword was hated when it was released, and it has like some dedicated fans. And then there's Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask that have always been incredibly popular. There's a lot of other games in the main line that like have basically, were popular when they came out and stayed like that same level of popularity. But man, nothing like I feel like Twilight Princess has had like a fall from grace. Like when it came out, some people were critical of it, and some people were like, this is awesome. But now I just think it's like so forgotten. People go like, oh yeah, well, it's not like it doesn't have the same vibe as other Zeldas. And I as much as I really enjoyed playing Breath of the Wild and I really enjoyed playing Tears of the Kingdom, I just think that the story is like, there's something that's like not really hitting that Zelda vibe for me. It's like, it is Zelda, but it's like, it just doesn't, it's not what I wanted. And so I still think Twilight Princess like comes out on top. I mean, gameplay wise, it's like, it's comparing apples to oranges. Like, to compare Breath of the
very
Wild,
different games. And
compare Breath of the Wild with revolutionized gaming as we know it to like Twilight Princess is like kind of silly when you compare the gameplay. But man, I just think like it was so beautiful. I'd really want to have like, I was so sure, and you played like a little bit of Tears of the Kingdom, and basically this isn't a spoiler. I was so sure that Twilight would be back in Tears of the Kingdom.
That was the big thing of just when they had the second trailer and they had the backwards singing at the end of the second trailer. I was like, we haven't heard that since Twilight Princess. That's Twilight. It's like, are they going to bring Midna back? Are they going to bring Midna back? It's just, and I haven't gotten there yet, but it's very clear. All right, we have the Zonai, and that the Zonai are not the Twilight, but
there's no Twilight.
No. I definitely like, without getting into spoilers, that one thing I very much enjoyed for both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is how they have sewn together a lot of the disparate parts of Legend of Zelda lore and continuity that I very much like and appreciate that they finally unified the timeline. That obviously, for timeline purposes, they had to cobble things together when they had, the nexus that is Ocarina of Time. And I think they did a pretty good job of it. But I also very much think it was the correct decision to narratively say, okay, we have a 10,000-year gap, and that inevitably, all three of these timelines reach Breath of the Wild, and that we just have a single continuity moving forward. That I think that was actually a very smart writing decision.
I mean, I agree that it was a smart writing decision, but because I don't love the plot, I'm not happy with it. there's just something about like the way that the plots in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom shakeout that I don't love. But I think like narratively, you're right. Like it is like it's the
They
best
reduced the
idea to like,
complexity, that there was just
yeah,
having 3 timelines is too much for the
it's
layman, and that
silly.
that if you're a lore nut, that it's really cool and it's great, and I'm glad that they have preserved and that they have canonized that, yes, we have this split, and here is where these different games fall in these 3 timelines, breaking off from Ocarina of Time. That's really great that they aren't just hand-waving and saying, they all happen, they're in the same universe, but that they've actually gone through and put that effort into it. I think that's really neat. But at the same time, I think just for now and future writing, it would be too much work to try and then build into, all right, let's try and shoehorn things into the adult timeline, and then we're gonna
Yeah,
5
especially
years
if
later.
somebody already doesn't like a timeline. It's like, ah,
Yeah,
fuck, this whole
it's
Zelda game's in this fork prong, and it's like, I'm not.
yeah,
God damn it, I hate this one. It's like I can imagine why it makes sense to unify it.
yeah. But at the same time, I can. My commentary is largely based on, I think they made a good structural call, and if you have criticisms of the story that they are making in the unified timeline, that is a very fair criticism.
Yeah. I think it's truly just that, like, the whole, like, Twilight Princess is underrated. I think that they have uplifted Skyward Sword so high and, like, pushed, like, Twilight Princess into the back of the closet in a way. I would really like to see more. And I know that it's because Twilight Princess is basically a rehash of Ocarina of Time, but it's a cool rehash of Ocarina
It
of
was a
Time.
really good one.
I wish that they would continue with at least some of those vibes. I don't know. That's just my preference. That's also coming from somebody who really likes Twilight Princess.
I will say that
so.
tonally, Tears of the Kingdom, I think, is closer to Twilight Princess than any other Zelda game that we've had. That
Probably.
it is allowing itself to be darker, that it is both tonally and aesthetically, that it's noticeably darker than what you had in Breath of the Wild. So it has allowed itself to go there, but certainly not to the extreme that you had in Twilight Princess itself.
Yeah. Twilight Princess is so good. It was just so good. Man.
Just the big thing for me, I mentioned that I love the final boss sequence, that you have Possessed Zelda, which is super good, but also super unnerving, because it's like, all right, I need to beat this, but also, like, I don't want to harm Zelda. And then you have the Beast Ganon fight, and you think, all right, this could be it, that this is me fighting Ganon in its true form. And then you have Hyrule Castle exploding, and you think, all right, Minna sacrificed herself to ensure Ganon's demise, and that's really powerful. And what do you mean that Ganondorf is rearing up on a horse, crushing Midna's mask?
Yep. It's just so. I love it so much. It's just so epic the way that it turns out. And I also think that's my favorite Zelda too. She's so broody and cool, and like her outfit is so gorgeous. I love her. I love her so much.
Yeah, but it's a toss-up for me of if I like the Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, or Twilight Princess Zelda more. I think those two are definitely the strongest representations, and to be fair, that they are the two that give Zelda the most screen time, that she is, largely shoved aside in most of the other ones, that she, until recent iterations, has not been given much of a role at all. And I do appreciate that in recent years, they have allowed her to actually be a true character and not just a plot device.
Yeah. Although, like, I 100% agree, but maybe it's just me having, like, delusional fan brain. I really do feel like there is a, like, substance to Twilight Princess Zelda, at least comparatively. Like, she's such a... And the weird thing is, like, in Ocarina of Time, like, she has, like, the chic persona. Spoilers, sorry. Not me spoiling a
Statute of
25-year-old
limitations.
game. She has that chic persona, and yet you still don't really know that much about her, but I think the way that she treats Midna in Twilight Princess, and the way she sacrifices herself, and the way she's so curt, like, really speaks to, like, her personality. And although we don't see a lot of her, and she's definitely much more, like, well characterized, and you see so much more of Zelda in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Man, that's just, like, such an interesting Zelda. The way that it's so obvious that, like, she's burdened with being this she's burdened with responsibility in Twilight Princess, and yet she shoulders it. Whereas in Breath of the Wild, she's like really unsure of how to shoulder it. I think Twilight Princess is just such an interesting Zelda.
Mm, yeah, and that you have a really good point there of both iterations are her having a burden, and that they are very different takes on the character and how they handle that burden. That you are right that Twilight Princess Zelda is much more calm and collected and assured that she's much more mature, frankly. Whereas, and just aesthetically, that she seems to be older. That Twilight Princess Zelda seems to be, mid-20s. Whereas Breath of the Wild Zelda, I would probably say, looks early 20s. That she doesn't look like a teenager, but that she is distinguishably younger, I would say. And that she is very unsure, and part of that comes from the actual narrative being told in Breath of the Wild, that she is hitting this very literal roadblock in her responsibility, and that she is trying and that she is struggling, and that it is very difficult to be assured when you are, for whatever reason, physically incapable of fulfilling the role that you have been told you need to fulfill with the entire fate of the world in the balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. God, I love Zelda. I like
really
all
good.
Zelda.
It's really good.
As much as I have some criticisms here and there, even of Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, I just think that they're just truly like such amazing games.
Yeah. Now, on the other end of the gaming spectrum, so we have, Legend of Zelda, very prolific for its story, the timelines, and everything. One of your favorite, I don't even know if I can call it a single game at this point, but you mentioned growing up with your Namco plug-and-play system, and that it was a very formative device for you, but also that you have world record aspirations on one of them in particular.
I do, yes. So I had a lot of plug and plays when I was a kid. I had like the Littlest Pet Shop plug and play, but I think the one that I definitely gravitated the most towards is the Bandai Namco one. Actually, it may have just been Namco at that time. And it had Galaga and Pole Position and Pac-Man, and I know I specifically mentioned Pole Position in my world record aspirations, but really what was the most formative on that for me, I'm forgetting one. It's another like gun shooty game similar to Galaga. The one that was like the most formative for me was Mappy. I played Mappy over and over, and I definitely didn't get close to world record, but like I've always really had a affinity for mice and mice adjacent things.
I was going to say, is this where the affinity for rodents began?
It isn't where it began. I'm really not even sure where it began. I've just always had an affinity for rodents, to the point where like I actually have like a mouse collection all the way back from when I was a child. And when a family member went to like a tropical place, I can't remember where, maybe in Cuba, they brought me back like a coconut that was carved in the shape of a mouse.
Aww.
When I was a kid, like I was given a present from a family friend, and like the one definitive thing they remembered about like my interests was that like I liked mice. It was a ceramic mouse. I've just always really liked mice and big-eared animals. Chinchillas came after that, and I just really like rodents of all kinds. I've always been like that. So Mappy was just like, duh, of course I like Mappy. It also helps as a really fun game. But yeah, I played Mappy so much when I was a kid.
I'm trying to look up the Namco plug and play to see if I can find the list of the 5 games that were in there.
Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember what that last one is. It's plug and play. It's the Namco Miss Pac-Man and Friends plug and play, and it looks like it has. Oh gosh, that one's not it. Oh, Xevious.
Oh, yeah, I would have never remembered that one either.
Yeah, no, I didn't play it that much. It kind of sucked. But Pac-Man, Mappy, and Pole Position. Pole Position was kind of like the unsung hero. I played it like a ton when I was a kid, although I wasn't super really adept at it. But when I came back to it, like as an adult, when I found it again, after moving stuff for college, I was like, damn, I'm kind of good at this. And it's really addictive to play. I can hear the sounds in my head, like they're passing cars in it. Mappy is difficult, and I have not gotten close to any world record, not by any means. But pole position, it's a little bit more attainable. So I really would like to have, gosh, it was a year ago now that I had the stream. It was right after I debuted, and it was, race queen, gonna play the racing game that I played as a kid. I played pole position trying to get the world record, and I got pretty close. And there is a different world record for the plug and play versus like an actual arcade cabinet, and it's less on the plug and play because you're more limited, right? It's just you have to limit the code to a certain extent to have like 5 games in one on this little doohickey. But yeah, that's something that I want to revisit actually.
So, when you say world record, is this single lap, single race? Is this, from game start to completing every race available in the game? What is the definition of world record here?
So, do you know what pole position plays like?
I recall that it's a racing game. I've played it a couple times. I think there was a Namco Museum game for the GameCube, and I think that was my first time playing. It was either that or might have been Animal Crossing, come to think of it, because I think that was one of the games that was available in the original GameCube Animal Crossing that you could actually get some NES games, and pole position was one of them.
Dang,
But
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
oh yeah, you could play. I know there was at least Excite Bike. There was Clue Land.
Really?
There was Donkey Kong. And the thing
Oh
is,
my goodness.
you couldn't save your progress in any of these. But that you could get these items. They were extremely rare. Or what I did was, you could get the codes to get them. But they were these full playable NES games. It hasn't been done since the original Animal Crossing on the GameCube, but that was actually my first exposure in time playing the original Donkey Kong game and several others that were on the NES because I didn't grow up with an NES myself, but
Mm-hmm.
I definitely remember playing the game pole position on GameCube one way or another, but I also
That's
remember being not very
crazy.
good at it, and I don't think I ever got anywhere significant in the game. So, the short answer to your previous question was, do I know all of pole position? The answer is no.
All right. Well, that helps because as to your question about like world record in what way, there's probably only like one real way to quantify a world record in pole position because the game goes like the first pole position game. I don't know anything about pole position 2. I think there's different racetracks in it. So in pole position 1, you do a qualifying race. You need to get first place in the qualifying race. There's like you max out at a certain. It's kind of like how some times like just are physically impossible for some games, and people used to like lie about them because people didn't understand the code and stuff. But like there's only like this minimum time you can get for this qualifying race. So you just like truly you can't go past it. So that
there is
probably
an
has
objectively
nothing.
optimal performance.
Exactly. You just couldn't possibly go past that. So you get first in the qualifying race, so you're first in the race. And basically what you do is you just play this track and you dodge past cars and you try not to hit the signs and run off the track because that will lose speed. And when you pass the finish line, it adds like 30 more seconds, I think, onto the clock. And you just need to keep passing cars. So really the bulk of the points comes from passing bonuses. And like by the end of like the third lap, and it just goes over and over and over, and it's just this one.
It's an infinite runner.
Track. It's an infinite runner, but eventually you will like run out of time. It's just like it takes like 45 seconds to do the track, and you only get like an extra 30 each time or something. Those aren't the exact numbers, but like
and that
at a certain
eventually
point,
the number of opposing cars to pass to get bonuses for will mathematically be reduced to the point where you just can't get enough.
Exactly. Like, and you just also will just inevitably run out of time if you're doing like a perfect run. And if you are able to, it's really difficult to dodge cars, and you can cut corners to save like a second or half a second of time in a specific way, and like that's really how you'd be able to get a world record. But truly, like the only thing that's like quantifiable is like how many cars you pass, and that's how. That's not like you would. The world record wouldn't be like, oh, I passed this many cars. It counts up to a certain like point value at the very end, but like there's only that one track, and then that's the only thing of meaning is passing cars and not hitting other cars, so that you don't run out of time, so you can pass more cars and get more points. And so that's how you'd be able to get the world record in pole position.
So, what is the world record, and where were you able to get to?
Gosh, I got so close. Let me see. It's only on a YouTube video that somebody has taken of the world record on the plug and play. I'm gonna Google it really quickly. Pole position, world record, plug and play. And it's the same one. So it looks like the world record is 63,990, and I think that is almost
a perfect game.
Almost a perfect game. Gosh, I wish I would have started this earlier, because the world record on the plug and play in 2014 was like 59,000. That's a 4,000 point gap, and I think you get 500 points for each car you pass. And I got past that world record, the 2014 world record, in my last stream of it. So like, had I just done this like a couple years earlier, I would have at least held the world record for a little bit. But now it's this impossibly high number. But I think I got to like 61,990, like 2,000 away.
Oh, wow.
So that's only 4 cars. And that was like with a crash too. So like if you were able to like just not crash, it's a lot harder to do than saying. If you just like don't crash, you truly could possibly get like a perfect run. But yeah, once you crash, even on the qualifier, if you don't get first place for the actual race, which just means like you get it under 60-second lap, then you'll get first place in the actual race. If you don't get that, you just start over. Like you need that specifically, and then you need to not crash into anybody, at least on the first lap. And then you'll have like a true shot at getting the world record.
Do you think you would ever do an attempt again on stream, or do you think that's something that you would want to do off air?
I would want to do it on stream. You know, like I mentioned earlier, I kind of have this like pressure to perform on stream, which makes it sort of difficult. But like if I were to get the world record, I absolutely would want it like recorded and live on stream.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm either gonna have to adapt or get rid of that anal obsession with performing if I really want that world record.
Well, I feel like a world record attempt inherently is going to be something that is entertaining and compelling, and that for any situation to allow for, effectively zero chat interaction, just full focus, a world record attempt is going to be where people are not only sympathetic, but just that they will be completely engaged, even if you are not paying attention to chat and being conventionally entertaining, quote unquote.
That's true. That's true. The only problem is that like versus a world record in like Mario per se, like Super Mario 64, those like cap out at like 15 minutes. And you could like, an unskilled world record attempt would probably like have mistakes that would cause you to reset within the first couple minutes a few times. But man, it is the most annoying thing when you're like bashing your head against a wall trying to like you're making mistakes you shouldn't be making, like in the qualifier, and you keep getting second and you just have to keep resetting. And there's something about the drone of the road in
oh
pole
yeah,
position.
I feel like you'd have to mute the game. There's no way you'd be able to do that and just be listening to that particular sound design for hours on end.
At a certain point, it does get like grating. Although I think I've like adapted my brain to like it, but I can imagine as a viewer, it's probably like, holy shit, I'm so sick of this noise.
How long is a run that is at least a proper attempt? So when you had that 61,000 run, how long was that from start to end?
Like max 4 minutes.
Okay, so it always ends up being very short one way or another.
Yeah. You end
Well,
up
at least-
running out of time at that point.
Yeah. Well, at least it ends up being efficient, so if you restart, it's not, ugh, I just burned 2.5 hours and now I need to restart the entire run.
That's true. Although it's kind of like there's pros and cons where it's like doing the same part over and over and over and over can kind of feel like
The repetition in iterations is inherently going to be higher since it is so short.
exactly. So it starts to feel like really repetitive as opposed to like there's of course an insane frustration to getting 2 hours into a world record run and fucking it up, right? But there's also this like ugh of like having to reset 30 seconds into a run like over
it's
and
much
over and
more
over.
grating to have
Mhm.
to just do and see the same thing. Are the cars procedurally generated where there is variance, or is it something that you can just memorize over time?
I do believe it is specific. They're not procedurally generated. So
Okay.
I think I have like the qualifier like in my head entirely. Like I know where every car is on every turn and like where to like brake and like shift down because you have to like downshift gears too.
Mm-hmm.
That's another aspect of it. You both turn and also go from like high to low, and it's a little involved for a little plug and play game, but it's addictive. I don't know what about it is so addictive. I think maybe it's that you go so fast in it. It's also really interesting too because it's from an era of games before, like kind of similar to the first Mario Kart, where like there was no Z-axis. So
Mm-hmm.
there's like no hills. You just like are on this flat thing that has like the worst perspective ever, and you can only learn the perspective by like playing the game and like learning the feel of the controller. And that's why I would prefer the plug and play to like an actual arcade cab. Not because like the it would be impossible to get the world record on an arcade cab. Maybe if I tried I could get it, but really it's that like I just am the most comfortable with the joystick.
Now, do you still have that original plug and play from your childhood, or did you acquire a new one somewhere along the way?
I still have my original from my childhood.
Aw, that's so cool.
Yeah, although when I did pull it out again after all those years, the batteries had exploded, so I had to clean it.
Oh dear. Well, at least it still worked. At least
Yeah,
after
thank
giving it
God.
the proper cleaning, that it wasn't just completely fried.
Yeah, but now like all the stickers are like peeling off because it's like 20 years
It
old.
gives it character.
It's my plug and play. That's the important part.
Yeah. That's super cool. Do you think that's something that you're going to attempt again anytime in the near future, or do you think that's sort of just it's something that will happen eventually, but you're not looking to do anytime soon?
I think I might want to do it again over the summer. I don't know why I keep putting off. I think it's because I've been so incredibly busy. Maybe after
After
the
the
busyness all
concert.
goes away. Yeah, maybe after the concert and I just don't have any like pressing insane plans to fulfill. I'll do it again. I'll have like a free evening to spend because I have to go all day at the racetrack. I work full time at the racetrack. Obviously, I'm a race queen, and then I come home and then I do streaming, and then then there's like a 2-hour window from like 6 to 8 before my streams usually start that I like will clean and eat dinner or like do other behind the scenes VTuber related stuff, and then I get off, and then I almost always like do more VTuber related stuff, like trying to figure out stuff for my schedule or like coordinating with artists or just like everything. And then like that's kind of it's like all consuming. Like I almost always do that. So I don't plan out these long streams or these marathon streams, quote unquote, because I want to have time to like actually do the behind the scenes stuff that I've promised. Like I can't possibly stream every single day next week, even though I would really like to stream every single day next week because it's leading up to my anniversary, because I have so much stuff that I still need to coordinate behind the scenes for my concert. So I just have a lot going on that doesn't allow me to give myself the time to just have a stream that goes as long as I desire it to go. Although sometimes I do have streams where like I let loose and I'm just like live for 6 hours. But yeah, I do have to like limit myself just because I need time to work on that stuff that I can't post about,
Yeah,
the secret
this is
stuff.
this is a very specific time right now, that it is that time right before the concert, that you are putting in those final bits of preparation, and that it makes a lot of sense. Of course, you're not going to be able to have that type of extended stream, but uh, once the concert's all said and done, and that you have a bit of a chance to recover and everything, that I look forward to seeing you making that next attempt at the world record, and that. Do you know which website do you use as sort of your tracking that? Where would you be submitting that?
Oh, I think where I would submit it is. Let me find. Oh man, actually, speedrun.com maybe. All I know is that somebody has a recording of their 63,990 run on YouTube. So I think the only thing that I had really thought of, because I'm really not like a speedrunner, I don't know too much about it. I was just gonna like upload the video to YouTube and like, upload the run to YouTube and be like, pole position world record, VTuber owns it, bada bing bada boom, you know?
Yeah, looking at speedrun.com, that I see the record for Arcade Inaccurate, Atari 2600, Atari 5200, ZX Spectrum, and Vectrex. Which of those is the plug and play?
None of those are the plug and play. The plug and play is its own thing. I don't know if it even like qualifies.
I don't know if Speedrun. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know if speedrun.com has records currently for plug and play.
I don't believe it does, and you know what? It's partially probably due to the fact that it's not like a real console to begin with, but it's real to me, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There's still some skill involved. Like I can, with a little bit of like practice, I can like take my plug and play expertise and go to an arcade cabinet. So it's not that like it's completely divorced from that. So maybe it's unfair that the plug and play is not on speedrun.com. Maybe I'll be the first application.
Maybe you'll be the first applicant that you will have the world record, because no one has thought to actually submit it to speedrun.com yet. Boom.
Interesting. Maybe I should go and find that exact number from my last stream.
Yeah, and just maybe even contact the folks at speedrun.com prior to the attempt of saying, hey, I plan to attempt this regardless. When I do, is this something I can submit here, yes or no? And that way you at least sort of enter into it understanding that, it would feel perhaps more, it'd be a bit more heartbreaking to have this, think that you could submit and then be denied, and that, I assume you would try it, even if speedrun.com says no, for whatever reason, we do not qualify the plug and play, that at least you sort of understand, okay, I will have this and that I'm still going to post it, but that having that answer ahead of time.
Yeah, I probably should work that out in advance when it comes to that. But it's like you said, it's still meaningful. It would still be meaningful to like me personally. And also, I guess I kind of thought of like, this isn't true of like all speedruns, but I kind of thought of maybe speedrun.com is a little bit more like, Guinness Book of World Records in a way. Like you have to like jump through so many hoops to like get somebody out there to like to verify it and stuff like that. So
yeah, but speedrun.com is definitely sort of the brand name, so to speak, for these types of records.
Mm-hmm. So I guess by that, I mean, it really wouldn't like destroy me if it was like, oh no, we can't, like that one doesn't qualify. Like I understand. It's not really, you can't really compare it to any other, because of the way that you, I don't think I mentioned this. I did say that you use a joystick, which is really different from the wheel. But the thing is that you play pole position by twisting the tip of the joystick.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so it's like really different from playing on any other controller ever. So
yeah, just the literal motor skills that you were using would change if you were to go to an arcade cabinet.
Exactly. So it really is its own thing. But I also would completely understand if they were like, no, we can't take that. If I had, that's also why, like, if I did do it off stream and then they were like, no, we can't take it, it would make me upset. So I really want to, like, stream and try and get the world record. And if I had the world record on stream, it would be like at least some credibility to the assertion. I have the world record. It may not be something that they care about enough to log on their website, speedrun.com,
But at the
But
same time, it could be a thing of they might get back to you and say, we can certify it if you meet these qualifications. Like maybe they would say we
mm,
would need to have hand cam footage to
I
show
could
that
do
you are
that.
actually operating the plug and play system and not using just your keyboard or your mouse to operate this, and that, all right, we will allow this. It is a specific console, and that nobody has attempted this in the past because it was a limited production run type of thing from whenever it was actually made, and that very few exist nowadays, so there isn't much competition for it, but that under the following circumstances we would allow the certification. But to know that in advance, because if it's something as simple as, all right, we need to see your hands on this joystick because it is a different type of input, and that is the difference of it, you wouldn't want to find that out after the fact when you did this and that every other qualification is met and it was just
Yeah.
you didn't have the hand cam.
Yeah, I guess it really is worth reaching out then, huh?
Yeah, and the worst they can say is no.
Exactly.
Well, cool. So yay, I helped a bit, maybe. I don't know.
I really didn't like consider. I was just gonna like do what the other guy did and be like, "Well, I'll put it on YouTube. Leave it at that." That probably is a good point, especially the hand thing.
Yeah.
I wonder
So
if I'll take my gloves off for it or not. I have to. It's probably a lot easier to grip the the joystick without my gloves on.
well, actually, it almost makes me wonder that with the right type of gloves, would it be easier? That just making sure that your
Ooh,
hand doesn't get sweaty, that you always have that traction on that joystick.
that's true. It could be like cheating, actually. Hmm.
Oh, well, I consider, American football players wear gloves that have that sticky surface, and it's still considered legal just to have that as an augmentation versus trying to catch with their bare hands. So, but at the same time, that's another thing for the folks at speedrun.com that they might say, you can do this, but we need the hand cam, and it has to be no gloves. That, that do they consider gloves to be cheating, or is that something that they will allow? That those are the types of questions to get vetted ahead of time.
Yeah. Much to think about.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Now, on the topic of different things that you've done on stream, that just last night you were actually working on some art for, I don't know if it was for the Idol concert specifically, but you were actually making yourself an Idol outfit.
Yeah, I like to do drawing streams, and yesterday actually was kind of a miss in my opinion, just because I usually can come up with something by the end of a stream, especially like a design stream. But yesterday I was stumped. Perhaps it's that I value idols and idol culture and like me being an idol so highly that I found it really difficult to actually like come to a specific design. But I do really enjoy like having drawing streams, and I like to draw also. Although yesterday was specifically designing an outfit over my like actual body versus like drawing it entirely from scratch. I have those types of streams also.
Yeah, and we actually have here, I'm going to shift us over, some of your art. That this first one we have up here is your snow bunny design, you on a snowboard. That we have a couple of these actually. Do you remember when you did this one?
I think this was 2022 December. It was kind of recent. I did this on stream. I was just like in a snow vibe. Actually, I think it was earlier than that. I think it was like October or November, and I was just like fantasizing about like winter and like snow designs are so cute, etc. I have my VTuber sister Robinius, drawn by Soryu Mama. They have a affinity for sled dogs and like winter wear as a result of that, and so they had drawn me wearing like a oversized snowboarding coat, and so I just got in that mood of like gonna think about like Ashton hitting the slopes and stuff. So that's why I wanted to draw this.
Is drawing something that you've been into for a long time, going back to grade school? Were you always really excited to go to art class, or is it something that you picked up more recently?
Yeah, so I've actually been drawing ever since I've been watching anime, so a long, long time. I'm probably better at drawing traditional just because I almost always drew in like notebooks and stuff when I was a kid. But I've been drawing for a long time. I kind of stopped before I started streaming just because I didn't have the time and I didn't really have the inspiration to do it. But there's been a lot of times where like I've just wanted to draw, especially when you're surrounded with so many people who are also amazing artists. Like I have so many amazing artist VTuber friends. I like to draw, although it does make me a little insecure because I am like not near their level by any means. Fully a hobby artist, but it still is fun to draw. So
Did you
yeah.
have that how to draw anime book when you were growing up?
I definitely did. I also used to whip out the tracing paper, trace over the drawings in those. I used to do that. I used to print out like pictures of my favorite manga and trace over those. I think tracing was a really big thing for me back then. I have kind of like a chameleon-like style now as a result because I don't have any unified aspects to my art from like picture to picture. It's just like however I want to draw that day is how I'll draw.
So that's really neat that you have that free-form style, that you're, you know, giving up consistency, quote unquote, means that you're adaptable, that you're able to do different types of things.
That's true. I do like it in that way, but sometimes I do wish I could like really pin down my style better and then draw some more. But I am quite slow at it also just because I don't do it so often. I do enjoy it nonetheless though.
Yeah. That, you know, you don't need to be professional at something to have fun doing. That everybody starts off not knowing how to do art. That art is one of those skills that, yes, you can have an amount of quote unquote natural talent, but that ultimately it comes down to practice and just being able to actually hone your skills. That I can't draw a circle to save my life. I am a terrible artist and generally do not have interest in art. I know that if I wanted to, if I had the interest, that I could dedicate the time and effort and become good at art. Do I have that drive? No, but that if you do, it's something that you can achieve.
Exactly. And I had that drive for a long time when I was younger, which is when I honed all these skills when I was in like elementary and middle and into high school is when I did most of my drawing. But now I'm back to using a tablet. I did a little bit of tablet drawing when I was in like middle school, and then almost all of high school I didn't really draw that much at all. And college I didn't draw that much, and it did take a bit to get used to drawing again. But it looks like I didn't really forget a lot of the skills I had, which I'm thankful for.
Yeah, and that it's something that, you know, if you decide that you want to start pursuing art more, just, you know, for yourself, or even want to start, you know, considering it professionally, that you have these foundations, that this is very good. This is, I assure you, Ashton, I could not make this if you gave me 12 hours. It wouldn't happen.
Practice makes perfect. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, truly, like you say, like I couldn't make this had given 12 hours. The reality is that like
Okay,
I
maybe
drew
given
this.
12 hours, but
I drew this with 15 years. That's really what I drew with. It may have only
Yeah.
taken like a couple hours to draw, but it took like a long time to even get to this point. And I don't even think it's all that great. I think I'm kind of proud of I think the proportions are a little funky, but I'm like kind of specifically going for something more sexy in this, like with the hip dip and the boobs and stuff. But I think it is like still somewhat anatomically correct. Maybe not. Somebody can roast me
I
about
would say that it for anime style, this is atomically correct.
Yeah, that's basically what I mean. I think, you know, I have a good, and I don't think I have a photographic memory. I wouldn't go so far, but I have like a good idea on how like bodies work. So I didn't really like use a reference or anything. I don't tend to use references. And that's one thing that I'm proud of, is that I can kind of remember how bodies look. Faces are a different story, but I can remember how like bodies look and what poses I want to draw. Faces are a lot more difficult for me. But yeah, it truly was like this, like my art is the culmination of like a long, long time of drawing, not just like
Yeah, that's
drawing
how
for stream.
yeah, that's how art is. Like I was saying, it's something that you build up your skills over years and years. That I actually like your phrasing a lot better than mine. That isn't a however many hour drawing. That is a 15-year drawing.
Yep. 15 years on and off too, so I didn't not like 100% on. Don't want to get roasted and be like, that's all you can do in 15 years. If I was drawing every single day for 15 years, I'd be drop dead amazing at it. But I don't do that. I'm a race queen.
Yeah, but we do have a couple others, specifically with snow theming. That you mentioned that someone had drawn you in a puffy coat, and we have here what I assume is your take on that.
Yeah, I was on like oh my gosh, I really wanted like an Aritzia super puff coat last year. I never actually ended up buying one because there were too many that I wanted, and they're like kind of expensive, so I couldn't buy multiple of them. And I shouldn't buy multiple of them anyway, so I was in my puffy coat fantasizing era, and that's how I drew. Although this is unfinished, you can see I didn't draw the rest of the coat on the right side. I think I drew this on stream though. Yeah. And again, I really like turtlenecks. It was close to winter. I wanted to try out a new nose shape, a new mouth shape, and so I drew this.
Yeah, and that I like that you have that texture on the puffy coat, and that like you said, you didn't finish on the other side, but that we see the design intent here.
Yeah, it definitely is a puffy coat.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we have one other winter one, which let's just say does not have a puffy coat.
No. Oh man, it's a whole doodle. Okay, so this is definitely
I couldn't cut any of this.
It was from a
Everything
stream.
here is gold.
So usually when I draw on stream, I'll like take requests or suggestions or draw memes and stuff. And so basically the top right was like, I wanted to draw under boob, although that's against Twitch tasks.
Well, no, you're able to draw it. You're not allowed to show it. That it runs into.
That's what it is.
Well, so there's actually a really interesting case about this. Do you know what happened? There was a case with a Nyanners model.
Yeah,
last year.
Nyanners is Riku model was showing too much booby.
But Diariku was able to work on it on stream because Twitch allows nude art to be done. So Diariku worked on the entire model on stream, no issue, because at that point in time it is art. But once it is being used as a model, that is then a representation of the streamer, and that Twitch does not allow streamers to show that much skin, and that they do consider, VTuber models to be the representation of the streamer. So it hit this really corner case ruling, which it kind of sucks, but obviously, as of day of broadcast, there's a lot of criticism of Twitch, rightfully so.
Yeah.
But that was one that I looked at and said, okay, this is actually a very logical ruling, and it's an interesting case where it hadn't been hit before, but I will at least give them credit that there was fair and logical adjudication, and on Yanner's side, it was completely understandable why Shin Diariku didn't necessarily think about the rules in that sense, because, prior to VTubing, this type of differentiation in adjudication doesn't exist.
Yeah, I agree. I remember when that was explained, I was like, that actually makes a lot of sense. Twitch can make a lot of silly decisions, depending on the content or the specific instance. But I thought that actually was, when it was explained, it was like, okay, I understand where they're coming from with that.
Yeah.
Like, that is fair.
Yeah, so since this is art, that you were totally fine. Underboob is absolutely allowed as long as you are drawing it and not quote-unquote occupying it, I suppose.
Nice. Okay, perfect. That actually makes me feel better, because a lot of times people come into my design outfit stream. So I had one previously. It was a Donathon incentive to make a new outfit for my 3D. It ended up being Venice Beach themed. But like I had to make my my model like nude. It wasn't like detailed nude, but everyone was like, "Oh,
you start
you're
with the
gonna
base.
get in trouble." But yeah, I had to make a base, so I ended up like putting like underwear and panties on it. But even so, it was like I did actually get worried for a bit. Like, man, maybe this isn't allowed. But that's good. I actually forgot about that entirely. The whole Jabri Kunyaner situation.
And then we have, we have this detailed art up top, and then we have Chilla on a chimney, and she will commit crimes at night.
Yeah, this one was actually around December, which is why we were in a Christmassy mood. Chilla on a chimney and Ashton on the shelf. I think there was actually like a better pun there. Not just Ashton on the shelf.
I see a little bit of text here, which I can't quite... Whoops, wrong button. I can't quite make it out, so I'm just going to totally mess with my overlay here for a moment and see if I can figure out... What does it say? It just says... Pink Moon.
I have no idea.
I don't know what that is.
I don't remember what that is, actually. Oops, sorry. Wow, I probably wrote that down because somebody suggested me to Google something in chat, and I was like, I'll write that down to remember. And I didn't. I don't remember at all, actually.
Oh, well, still, Demon Dandy cracked the code. It's a message from your past self, Ashton. I do like Chilla on a chimney, though.
Isn't it funny? I like Chilla on a chimney. So silly.
Yeah. And, with that, we do have... Where is it there? Because you gave me a lot of pieces of work. Ah, here it is. Here is Chilla, the pit crew.
Oh, yes! Okay, I actually did want to talk about this one because I think it's very unique when it comes to VTubers. This is the icon from my pit crew. Do you know what a pit crew is?
Yeah, and that in racing that you have the pit crew, which is the group of people that when the driver pulls off to the side that will quickly, whether it be changing tires or, doing maintenance or taking care of the car in the race, during the race.
So do you know what a pit crew is?
PICREW, a pit crew?
Yes.
That is a little art tool where you're able to basically have sort of a customized thing that it's a website where people can make different templates and whatnot.
So that's actually what this is. This is a pit crew. This is the icon for it, but I did a stream where I made a pit crew for the pit crew. And you can customize different arms, different tails, different ears, different accessories, different faces of Chilla. And I had a lot of my pit crew make one and post it to Twitter, which I was very happy about. So that's what this is. The pit crew.
So you did not draw this particular piece, but you did create it.
Yes, I drew each piece individually, and it's piecemeal together on pit crew.
Oh, wait. Okay, so I might have misunderstood. So you made a pit crew where you created and populated all the different parts of it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's neat.
Yeah.
At first, I thought you were saying
myself.
that you had. At first, I thought you were saying that you had found, a pit crew that was made by somebody else and made this using that, but you actually made the full tool. I don't know if I've ever had anyone on the show that has done it before.
It's kind of annoying to do, so a lot of people don't end up doing it, but I just thought because, I have little Chilla mascots and everyone has their own personality and is different in different ways. I thought it would be like a fun thing to do, so yeah. I made a pit crew for everybody.
I've seen people make templates of their chat mascot where it'll just be usually an outline, be like, okay, everybody, go on and create your own, fill in the blanks and give it the personality. But I've never heard of somebody doing that for their mascot and then creating the full-on tool and having it done that way, because certainly, for someone like me, that even if you give me an outline, I'm not going to be very good at actually filling it in and making my own thing. But
exactly, I don't believe the pit crew is very... Pit crew is not very artistically inclined, so I thought this was the better idea. And also, I just thought it'd be like a fun stream idea in general. But yeah, it ended up being really cute. So I can link it if you were ever interested in taking a look at it. But yeah, each piece drawn by me on stream. For the most part, like Demon Dandy said, I did draw most of it on stream, and then I was like, I'm tired, and then I ended stream, and then I was like, never mind, and then I kept working on it off stream, and then I uploaded it at like 6 a.m. and then went to sleep.
I know, I'll link it in the video description for when this goes up on YouTube. By the way, hi YouTube, like, follow, subscribe, and all that jazz.
Hi.
Yeah, so I'll definitely be sure to have that in there. So definitely send me the link when you have the chance. That's super cool. So this one is yours, and then everybody else in the pit crew was able to make their own.
This one's mine because it has the wings like me. Although I'm not wearing my wings right now. I'll throw them on. My Bluetooth
Yes.
wings.
Yeah. They remind me of the Cardcaptor Sakura rod wings. I don't know
Yeah,
much about Cardcaptor Sakura. Also,
they do have that
sorry,
kind of
Returner. The auto mod automatically blocks links.
that's for the best probably.
I can send
thought.
links, but
They already know what the pit crew link is though. I'll send it to you afterwards. Yeah, they are kind of similar to the Cardcaptor Sakura wings. That was definitely the inspiration. This specific kind of anime styled curly wing is very Y2K, like old style clamp. I know exactly where you're coming from. It looks like the Cardcaptor Sakura wings. It basically is Cardcaptor Sakura wings.
let's see here. This next one, so the Vipers. So as far as I can tell, this is just the model. So did you fully redraw your model? Is this just you redrawing, or is this just you drawing the Vipers?
So I do this as a donathon incentive. It was like design a new pair of glasses because I have a pair of round glasses that I'll put on for when I'm doing drawing streams or trying to be smart. And the incentive was like at this much. So I've been referring to the donathon throughout the stream. I had a donathon a couple months ago to fund my 3D model. That's what it was for, and I got my 3D model made and debuted, and so it came to fruition, which I'm very happy about. We hit all our goals, which is amazing, and I still have like a backlog of stuff to do for it just because there were so many incentives and so much to do, which I'm thankful that all my pit crew has been kind and letting me take my time with the incentives because I have all this other stuff going on, aka the concert. So yeah. This was an incentive to draw glasses, and then what ended up winning was Pit Vipers, and so I thought it would be kind of funny to have it instead of Viper say crew, so it's Pit Crew. My Pit Crew Pit Vipers.
Yeah, very nice. Now, these next two are ones of you again, and this one is the Hatsumode, and I'm guessing this was for a New Year's or potentially a festival.
Yes, it was New Year's. I just wanted to draw like a Furisode because I really like the fluffy kimono look from when you go out for Hatsumode in Japan. It's very elegant and beautiful and also warm because it looks very fuzzy. So that's why I drew this, and then up at the top I drew, oh my gosh, I forget what it's called, but it's a New Year's thing where you stack 2 mochi on top of one another and then put a clementine on top, a mikan, and it's specifically for New Year's. Gosh, I wish I remembered the term for it. And so instead of mochi, I drew 2 pikuro sitting on top of one another with a little mikan on top.
Yeah. At first, I'll admit, the first time that I glanced at this, I thought that this was one pit crew like giving the other a massage or something. Just the way that it's positioned, that the feet I initially thought were hands, and that they were
I
just
see
massaging
it now,
the back.
like massaging, and the other one is going.
Yes,
I can see it.
Now, for the hairpiece here, did you do each of those little leaves by hand? Did you use a particular tool for this? That there's a lot of detail on that.
Yeah, so I didn't realize this until this is actually the really interesting thing about streaming art, is that sometimes people who know how to use a program better than you are in chat, and they're like, why don't you use this tool? And it's like, huh? I didn't know that was a tool I could use. So I think this was one of the first times I ever used the ruler tool, and you can use it to make a mirrored canvas, like a mirrored layer on the canvas, and you can also have it so that there are more than one mirror. So like this one, I probably did like 12 mirrors, and then I just drew like each flower coming out the middle I don't know how to describe it properly, but basically imagine it's like a mandala.
Yeah, I understand conceptually how this works, and I also understand how difficult it would be to describe in words.
It is difficult to describe. Basically, there's like 12 mirrored portions, and you only have to draw in one of them because it'll mirror it around that central
Yeah, that
that
it
central
makes it
point.
uniform.
Exactly, and that's how I did that.
Yeah, that's super cool, and that's one of the fun things of that. Like I said, I'm no artist. That I know these types of tools conceptually exist, which is why I knew to ask. But I would have no idea where or how to use those tools. But I noticed that and was just like, that's such fine work that I can't imagine like most people that this is not meant to be a comment on your skills as an artist. I was like, I don't think that like even a highly skilled artist would necessarily go through and do every one of those by hand. That I think that a skilled artist would use that tool.
Exactly, yeah. And it's like you said, like I know so many tools exist. I knew this tool had to exist. It's just I could not
Didn't know.
ruler. Why is it called ruler? I don't know,
Yeah.
but
I think ruler. I think all right. This is going to make sure I draw a straight line.
yeah, I don't think like, oh, it's going to draw this like mirrored effect thing, but that's what it's for. So yeah, I just, you think like, man, this would be so much better if this had this one functionality, and it turns out, surprise, it does have that functionality. You just didn't know where to find it.
Yeah. Now we go from one New Year's picture to another.
Oh yeah! So that was originally Hatsumode, which is the New Year's from December to January, and this was for the Lunar New Year. I wanted to draw myself in a bunny suit eating mochi, because I love bunny suits, and everyone was drawing themselves in bunny suits.
It was the year of the rabbit, and bunny suit enjoyers were being fed quite well a couple months ago.
Exactly. So I wanted to draw myself in a bunny suit. And I like how this turned out. There are definitely parts of it that look wrong, like the hands and the legs are a little bit funky. But I like the face, and
the mochi's a really nice touch.
Isn't it? I like how it's all stretchy. I really like this piece.
And you still have the long Hatsumode sleeves, and that you did still include the checkered flag on the sleeve.
Yeah, I think I saw specifically, I think it was art of like Rem from ReZero that had similar looking sleeves that were like up high, but like not full kimono. And had those long droopy sleeves that the Furisode typically have. And so I yoinked that little design aspect, and then I was like, well, I wear long gloves anyway, so I'll add in the checkered sleeve part. So
yeah,
I like the bunny tail on the tip of my my chinchilla tail.
I didn't even notice that at first.
It's a hard detail to notice. That's another issue. I don't really draw like I don't color a lot. It's a folly of mostly drawing traditional my entire life. I don't really like to color.
I noticed, the little puffball there, but it hadn't actually clicked with me mentally of that was putting one type of tail on top of another.
Yeah. That's why I thought it was very silly when I made it, so I included it.
Oh, that's very fun. Now, this next one was one of my personal favorites, and it's also the one that I'm going to need the most context on.
Mm-hmm.
Why the fish?
I'm pretty sure this is like an iconic image from 4chan. And it's like this picture of Mato Sakura from Fate's Stay Night eating a fish. And yeah, I can't really explain it actually. I'll admit I'm like a stupid secondary. I just saw the image on the internet growing up and went like, haha, this is funny. And so I was thinking like, what memes can I draw myself over? And I thought like, fish meme funny. And so I drew myself over the fish meme. And yeah, the caption is like, every day until you like it. Posting this every day until you like it. And I don't really understand the idea behind it, but like, I just wanted to post it and have everybody like it.
Well, I certainly liked it. Yeah, and it was one just, you sent me all these different images, and first off, this is the only one that was in red ink, so it inherently just popped when I saw all the different ones. And it was just like, it's a fish.
And
it's like,
I'm devouring it.
It was that type of simple yet silly, which as soon as you said to me, it was like, oh yeah, I can absolutely see this being a meme. It is that type of, like I said, simple but silly, and the fact that I could react to it that way with zero context is sort of a testament to how fit it is to be that type of meme image.
Exactly. It's very funny. I think it's also personally fitting too. If I recall, I'm thinking more about it. I also really like salmon. That's like one of my things. So my sleeves say cheese because, I'm
Yeah.
mouse adjacent. And I have like a cherry motif also. But I also really like salmon personally. That was a thing. I always ate salmon around like special events. Just by accident usually. Like on my 6-month anniversary after the stream ended, I made myself like a salmon bowl. And then like after my debut, I got like salmon sushi. I just really, really like salmon in general. And so sometimes I'll draw myself with like a fish pillow, cheeses and cherries and fish. And this was just like me eating salmon. It was a dual meme.
Yeah. I am a big fish enjoyer as well, that you're in good company here for salmon.
Me love fish.
This one is the only one that doesn't have you in it because this is a drawing of friends. And funny enough, one of these 4 have been on the show before. That Mimi was on the show actually just within the past 2 months.
I know. I meant to watch that one before I came on because I was so curious as to what she talked about with you. But yeah, me and Mimi are friends. I think this was sort of close to my debut. I wanted to draw my VTuber mutuals who had drawn me as a present for my debut. So I drew Riki Nyanko, Hena Mimi, Robinius. This is actually before Robinius even debuted. So Robinius is my sister from my artist mama now. And then that's Bourbon, goes by Bon now only. And yeah, this was from a while ago. But this was a stream where I drew as like a thank you for drawing me. I drew them back. But yes, love Mimi. Mimi and I have actually known each other for a very long time. So I was very excited when she became a VTuber, and I was very happy that she drew me as a commemoration for when I became a VTuber.
That's awesome. And that if this was around that time of debut, that would then mean that this piece is just about a year old now.
Exactly. Probably like 11 months at least.
Yeah, and that they all have their own very distinct styles, and you also drew them from different angles.
Yeah, I don't like to draw like same facey. I have this. I tend to draw like how Bourbon is drawn with that 3/4 angle facing the left, my left. I tend to go for that. So I wanted to draw it in multiple angles, especially if they were going to be on the same canvas. I really like to spice it up. It's kind of like, this is like totally random, but you ever like see like a girl post selfies and like 3 of the selfies are on the same angle? Mm-hmm. I always think like, damn girl, just pick one of those. Like, you know, you draw that angle?
I can appreciate wanting that variety and that being able to differentiate all of them. Plus, just that way, neither you nor anybody who is looking at the art ends up comparing them because they are also inherently different.
Mm-hmm. Now that I'm looking at it too, all the eyes are drawn differently. I think Bourbon has like a more pronounced nose. Riki has Riki's eyebrows are in her design, so that's probably why I drew them that way. But they all look really visually distinct.
You mentioned that you have a very fluid art style, and you can really see it at play here.
Mm-hmm. I did also draw Roby like slightly cutesier because Roby is actually an artist. Actually, everyone here is an artist. They all drew me. Roby is a very, very talented artist, and I love their art style very much. They have this very cute, like shoujo art style from the 2000s. It's super adorable, so I kind of wanted to channel more like cutesy style for them.
Ah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And on the topic of artist drawing artists, this is the last of them, is you drawing a piece for Soryu Mama for, I think it was getting 100,000 followers on Twitter.
Yep, you can see on my gloves it says, wow, 100K instead of cheese.
I hadn't even noticed that. How did I not notice that?
Yeah, this is like one of the random times I colored. So the girl on the left is one of Soryu Mama's OC's, Mint-chan. She is a chinchilla racing girl. different from me. VTuber racing is different from chinchilla racing. She is not a chinchilla. She is a race queen for the chinchilla races. So it's the chinchillas who race, and she's just the race queen. And she has a Bluetooth tail. That's why it floats off to the side. And it was one of the first pieces of art that I ever saw from Sorayamama, and it just stuck with me. And she's probably the reason why I am now also a race queen.
Oh, that's fantastic. Because then this is really full circle now.
Mm-hmm. It made me very happy that I became one of Sorayamama's beloved OCs in a way.
That the first time I saw it, before I read the text, is the tweet where you posted this explained that this was in celebration. Initially, I looked this and was like, oh, is this supposed to be just Ashton sort of like alter ego of, all right, you have the dark red versus the blue and pink. But then finding out that this was another of your Art Mama's designs made it even more special.
Mm-hmm. It's an older design also, so that's kind of something that I don't bring up too often, because I of course I like it when people say like, your design is so unique, because I agree, my design is rather unique. However, I do wear the same uniform style as Sorayamama's other race queens, so it's kind of not unique in that way, but it is unique as to, like, I am one of her race queens. And so you can see the similarities between our outfits, me and Mint's outfits, when you look here. The cheeses, the checkerboard arm, the zipper pull on the neck. Our bodysuits are slightly different. Mine's more updated. But yeah, I'm definitely one of Sorayamama's race queens. You can tell just by my outfits.
Yeah. And that brings us to the end of all the art pieces that you have shared with me for today, but it's really nice that this is part of your content, that some folks are primarily art streamers, that that is their content, that is their work. Others are more gaming centric, that there's actually surprisingly, or perhaps unsurprisingly, few that do art but make it not a major part of their content, that it usually ends up being very, very significant or just doesn't exist, and you end up sort of hitting the middle ground.
Yeah, I think that's actually, you've pointed out one of the things I'm most proud of in my time during VTubing, is that I've managed to curate an audience that really does, I feel, in my opinion, does want to like watch most of the things that I do, even if it's like completely random. Like, I truly do feel like I am a variety streamer. Like, in the most pure sense of the term, I wanted to be a variety streamer. I want to do everything. I've done an ASMR stream before. It's not that it's not my thing. It's just that it's not my typical content. Like, I do drawing streams. I do like roleplay streams occasionally. I do gaming streams. Like, I just want to do exactly what I've always wanted. I want to do what I've watched VTubers do for the past like 4 years, and I felt like I really have been able to, and I'm glad that I have an audience that also wants to watch that and watch me regardless of what I end up streaming. So yeah.
Now, part of your variety content, as we've talked about already a fair bit tonight, is that you are very into anime, but one type of stream that you have done in the past is that you invite people to make these 3x3 grids of their favorite anime, and you basically review, roast them in real time. And I have made one for you tonight, so I'm actually going to send it here.
I'm so excited!
In Discord, and I will say, and I'll also have it up on the stream, I will say these are not necessarily my 9 top favorite anime. These nine are all, I would say, in my top 25, probably just top 20, if not 15. It is very difficult for me to definitively pick a top 10 nowadays. The only thing that is very definitive here, and I've said this plenty of times on the show prior, and it's the reason that it's in the center, Code Geass is my favorite anime of all time. I'm not going to say it's the best anime of all time. I'm not going to say that it should be everyone's favorite. But for me and my tastes, that it is something that just pretty head and shoulders for me winds up being my favorite. And that while I would say 3 or 4 of these, I knew right away were going to be in this grid of 9, and then there were 4 or so that I wasn't so sure that, it has been for probably about a decade now that if you asked me the question, what is your favorite anime, that Code Geass has been the answer. Will it ever be surpassed? I'm never going to say never, but I'm going to say it is a high
It's hard
hurdle
to
to
beat.
clear. Yes.
Wow, these picks.
And like I said, I specified that this is not necessarily my top 9, but I wanted to make this a broader representation of my tastes and try and have some representation in varying genres.
That's something interesting that you bring up, is that 3x3s are like so dependent on a person. Just like even what you determine what should be in the 3x3 is so varying from person to person. Like, oh, it's my 3x3 of like all my guilty pleasure anime, like my favorite anime, but like they aren't necessarily good. That's how some people will make a 3x3, or some people will make a 3x3 and be like, these are all the anime that I really like, that are like the best, that I feel like are like the best technically, like beautiful, like animation, direction, etc. Or there's people who will mix it up like you did, like you wanted to pick like a favorite from each genre that you have. Or there's somebody who are like, this is the definitive list of my top 9 favorite anime, barring nothing else about them. It is just that they are my favorite. So it's always really interesting to see how people, one, define the 3x3 and also what they put on the 3x3. So that is, I'm glad you pointed that out.
And like I said, while it's not necessarily my definitive top 9, these are all very high up there on my favorite anime. That as of now, on my anime list, I have 321 completed series. And that I would call all these in my top 25 very, very easily. And where they fall exactly in that range, it would be up for debate and depends on the day of the week. But these are all extremely high up there for me.
So something that I like to do when I'm looking at 3x3s, beyond like the roasting and whatever, is to kind of like pick apart what kind of anime watcher the person whose 3x3 I'm looking at is.
Please, have at it.
So I kind of think that you are a more recent anime watcher, just based on these picks, because some of these are older, but there are also some newer ones that have kind of been forgotten. So I would say that you started watching anime probably in the last 5 years. Is that accurate?
No.
No.
Definitely not. So if we are not counting, growing up watching Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, 4Kids TV, of, active anime consumption beyond what is on broadcast television, that would really begin for me 12, 13 years ago.
Okay. That still makes sense then, especially with Bacano being in here, because I was thinking like you could have started like longer ago and then watched Bacano as it was like coming out. That makes a lot of sense. Or it could be that like you just happen to find somebody, you started watching anime more recently and you happen to find somebody who was like, you need to watch Bacano. It's like super unpopular, but it's incredibly good, and suggested that. So with the Bacano, that was like, I was kind of waffling about. I am surprised as to, go ahead.
I found Bacano not via recommendation, actually, that I saw a trailer for it at one point at a convention in what would have been 2012 or 2013.
That makes
when
a lot
it
of
was
sense.
actively being printed on DVD, because actually Bacano at this point in time does not have an active North American license. There is no legal way to watch it. Any DVDs that you are going to find would have been printed at minimum, I think 5-7 years ago at this point in time.
Yeah, that makes sense then. So I guess I was right in that case. Like, you watched Bacano because you were there when it was released. And I guess the reason why I kind of thought you were leaning towards a newer anime watcher is because of Boku no Hero Academia being on here. Just because I assume that somebody who has watched anime for close to 15 years or more probably wouldn't like rate it that highly, but I think I'm also assuming that somebody who has watched anime for a long time has seen a lot of anime.
My Hero Academia is one that I look at and say, I am almost frustrated with how much I like that show because I understand that, it is one of the most popular shows of the past 10 years. That it
Hmm.
is, I have not watched many run-on shonens. That I watched Bleach up through about episode 300 when they defeated Aizen. Didn't watch
Hmm.
past that. I didn't really watch Naruto, haven't really watched One Piece, didn't really watch Dragon Ball Z. I fell in on the ground floor sort of for My Hero Academia that I started watching just before the second season began airing, after hearing really good things about it from enough people to turn my attention to it, because I'm the type that I generally prefer shorter series. That I'm going to want to watch something that is, 12 to 50 episodes generally, because I like seeing lots of different stories. I don't want to watch a 1,000-episode series. I know One Piece is amazing. I appreciate what it is. I'm
It's just too
almost certain.
much now that it's all made.
Yeah, I'm just not likely to watch. And I got in early enough on My Hero where I've been able to watch it. And I don't think My Hero does anything revolutionary. I think that what makes My Hero so good is that it hasn't written any new tropes, but it has a masterful grasp of its tropes and does its tropes better than almost any other series, and at a consistently high level, where it takes so many known concepts and it just does them so well.
I can understand that. I think that your first shonen anime that you get in on early, especially like a long form shonen anime, kind of does have like a special place in a lot of people's hearts.
Yeah, and that it's sort of the irony that for having watched anime, even if we go all the way back to say when was the first anime, that would have to be Pokemon when I was 6, 7 years old.
But have you ever seen
And
every single episode of Pokemon?
certainly not. And also
But
just,
yeah.
narratively, Pokemon is an episodic show, whereas My
Mhm.
Hero is a contiguous narrative.
Yeah, they're just fundamentally different. So yeah, I think that's why it kind of leaned me that way. I understand why you put that on there. There's like a multitude of reasons. I don't think that My Hero Academia is like all bad. Not by any means. I think there's like questionable aspects to it, and when people do include it on like a 3x3, it kind of gives off the vibe of like
Yeah,
newbie fan.
no, it was the one that,
Or
like, when I was assembling, like I said, I am almost frustrated with my own enjoyment of it, but I am not too proud to admit that I enjoy that show.
I think that if you enjoy Boku no Hero Academia, you should give more shonen a try because, like you said, they are not reinventing the wheel with Boku no Hero Academia. Maybe it does it better, but I think there's potential to enjoy other
Oh, I'm certain I would
similar
enjoy it,
shonen.
but I want to watch so many other things that
That's
I
fair.
don't think I would want to have the time to. I'm watching about 15 shows actively this season and have fallen behind by about an episode or two because the last 2 weeks have been very busy for me, and that
Yeah.
I on average nowadays will watch about 10 shows a season.
That's
And
crazy that you're watching 15 shows this season. I know you mentioned that during the pre-interview because my immediate thought was there definitely isn't 15 good shows airing this season. So I'm really curious as to what they are.
well, I can go through that right now. That the ones I'm watching this season are Birdie Wing season 2,
Okay.
Dead Mount Death Play, and Dead Mount Death Play turned my head specifically because it was the author of Baccano.
Hmm.
Demon Slayer, Doctor Stone, Heavenly
Okay.
Delusion, Hell's Paradise, Magical Destroyers, Witch from Mercury, My Home Hero, Ranking of Kings, Skip and Loafer, Ancient Magus Bride, Why Raeliana Ended Up at the Duke's Mansion,
Okay.
Yuri Is My Job, and Oshinoko.
Okay. Yeah, I think so a lot of those are sequels. Like almost like more than half of
It
those I
is a
think are
very
sequels.
sequel-heavy season.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's actually really solid. I was thinking like there definitely isn't 15 new anime that are coming out this season that don't suck ass. I think I like about 5 of the new ones that are airing. But that makes a lot of sense, especially if they're like new seasons of good shows. I do quite like Dr. Stone, Osama Ranking, he had some good stuff on there. So I'm not so surprised. I remember being like, dang, I can't think of 15, 15
Yeah,
shows that are all that good this season. But I tend to like naturally not include like sequels
sequels. Hmm.
in my thought process just because
Yeah.
like
The
you know
difference that none of these sequel seasons had anything airing last season.
I see. Yeah, I don't usually divide it that way. I just in my in my head. I went to say head and brain.
Brain, yeah.
So in my head, I kind of just treat them as like the same thing because people who are fans of the first season are naturally going to be fans of the second season, but nobody's going to be a fan of the second season without watching the first season. So I just tend to like separate it when I'm considering seasons of anime. Although I'm sure like there are seasons that are like more standout than others, but you can't just like dive right into a second season of an anime,
Yeah.
you know. So
Also,
that's
Burr
why
11, Tengoku Daimakyo is Heavenly Delusion. That's the
that's Heavenly
localized name.
Delusion. Yeah. Yes, Jay did mention that one, but he did not mention Boku no Yabai Kokoro. Wait, it's Boku no Kokoro no Yabai Yatsu, which is like my unsung hero of the season. I like it so much. If you could give it a try, I think you might enjoy it. It's so silly and cute.
Which one is this?
It's like, oh gosh, I forget the English name. It's like the tremors in my heart or whatever. It's about. It looks silly, and the first episode is like slightly off-putting, because the main character like kind of has the vibe of like an incel.
Yes, I remember seeing that.
He is just like a chunibyo, and it's cured almost immediately. It's very funny, and it's really silly, and like the relationship evolves in a very natural way. And I like highly recommend it. It makes me go like every time I watch it because I like it so much.
Okay, yeah, because I always make a point to go through the full list of shows airing on a given season, and I will generally not watch every single premiere. That there's usually a handful of, if it's a sequel season, obviously it's going to be automatically something I watch, and then there will be a few, if they really get my attention for some reason, that it'll be 3 to 5 new ones that I will just automatically be like, all right, I'm in just from the synopsis. And then I'll usually poke around, look at some early reviews, and speak with some friends that I know do watch basically every premiere, and get opinions on which other ones to pick up along the way.
Yeah. I agree with what Burr is saying. The plot synopsis, if you read the plot synopsis for Bokuyaba and it put you off, I completely understand.
Yeah, that was the thing that I'm looking at it right now, and I remember being like, that just sounds weird. I'll pass.
It's summarized like really poorly. It's the actual show is really
I have heard that
fun
it's
to
decent
watch.
from others after the fact, but since I was watching so many other shows already, I was like, okay, I can't add more to my slate right now.
This one will make you like squee, and also like Returner said I got Watamote vibes from it. It has like, you think it's gonna be like Watamote. I found Watamote like impossible to watch. I don't know if you know what Watamote is.
I do, yeah, and I didn't really care for it. I tried and like dropped it after 3-4 episodes. I don't even know if I made it to episode 3 actually.
It's difficult to watch Watamote because it's like, it's just too much. But Bokuyaba like really quickly drops that. The character that's like edgy in Chunibyo in Bokuyaba is like, he kind of stays like chuny and edgy, but it's like he has like this natural. There's a point, I kind of want to spoil it just slightly, where he realizes like, I need to stop being like so insecure and like making stuff up in my head about this girl because she just isn't that type of girl. And it was like so refreshing to have a character like finally be like, yes!
And to have that early in the series, not as the season finale.
Yes, it's just like, thank God he like, it doesn't like, it takes a while to get to the point because they're like bumbling middle schoolers, but it's like,
but that's how middle schoolers are.
Exactly. Thank God that doesn't like rewind like that. There are moments where it seems like, oh, why are you like thinking that? Because he's so insecure, and even he realizes he's being insecure, and it's like, thank God. It's like so satisfying when those moments happen. I really, really like it. So it's just like the most sugary, sweet, silly anime. I really, really like it and recommend it.
So we have the, almost oddity of and sort of misleading inclusion of Boku no Hero Academia.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, that I can absolutely see where that would give you that impression. So from that one, where does your eye go next?
I'm not sure it's darting anywhere specifically. There is one that I would like to talk about, but I'm still also getting the vibe that you like the classics. You know, love 'em or hate 'em. Kaguya's, it's a classic. Okay, Death Note, classic. Oran, classic. I'm pretty sure that's Brotherhood, Fullmetal Alchemist,
Yes.
classic.
I,
Kaguya,
I'm,
modern classic.
mhm. And classics are classic because they are good, generally
Mm-hmm.
speaking. Um,
Yeah, fault ya.
for historical context, quote unquote, Death Note was the first show that I watched subbed prior to it being aired. That for whatever quote unquote hipster it is, I watched Death Note before it was dubbed. I had been given the Death Note manga by a friend in middle school before it was completed
Mm.
in manga form, and that when I saw it was getting an adaptation, that I watched Death Note. It was the first show that I watched not on broadcast as it was airing in Japan, and that to this day I still hold it very highly. I still think it is good, and obviously there's a reason why I include it on this grid. But this was one that, for whatever little cred points it's worth, that I will say that I got to watch this one as it was coming out.
That is cool. I also quite like Death Note. It's not I wouldn't say it's like top, just because there is like quite a few issues I have with it, but I can see why like having that like really, I think I watched Death Note after it came out in English and it was already like really popular. That's when I had to like enter the anime scene, and so it was like, well, duh, I gotta watch that one. It's kind of similar to Boku no Hero Academia in the way that, like, in my opinion, in that, like, that was your first show and you really liked it. You watched this, like, standout show that you had already read the manga for, and, you got to it before it was popular and you really liked it. I can see a sort of pattern, is what I'm trying to say.
The other thing I will say is that Death Note and Code Geass often get compared, and that I think the reason that
Huh?
the-
What did they do?
oh,
Go on. I want to hear this.
that I've heard Light and Lelouch compared many times, and I don't
Oh,
agree
that's
with
what
the
you mean.
comparisons. But that for me specifically, that I as a viewer, one of the things that will really get me into a show, I like smart characters doing smart things, and both Light and Lelouch are smart characters doing smart things.
Mhm.
Anyone who says that they have remotely similar ideals or methodologies, I will firmly disagree with. But that a lot of those series is them, the whole 3D chess, and that the internal monologue, that here's how I planned and schemed and set
Mhm.
things up in advance to play out in my way, and I planned it all along. And that type of storytelling, campy as it might be, I have always enjoyed.
I agree. I think that it doesn't make any sense to compare them beyond the fact that like they're the way that they are portrayed in their anime is like similar, just in like vehicle, maybe not personality wise, but the whole
Yeah.
like 40 chess, mind games, blah blah blah, like that is definitely similar. But I agree that they aren't really meant to be compared. This list is interesting. Well, okay. I want to talk more about the anime on this list, but I think I want to give my definitive roast of you.
Please.
You have kind of normie tastes for being somebody who has watched anime for so long. That's my roast. Especially because it seems like so many of these are like the standouts in their genres. I know that's like something that you went for with this, but yeah,
Yeah, that's
not
fair.
that that's a bad thing.
Like I said, classics I think are classics for a reason. I will certainly say that
Exactly.
a lot of the shows on this grid are ones that many people hold in high regard.
Mhm.
Yeah, that if I wanted to go for like the Artur list that I could definitely
Curious about
assemble
that also.
but that
But see, the
the
important
yeah.
part would be like I'm interested in the auteur list, but only if that's like truly like those are the like top anime that you like, not just like, well, I've seen this show and I quite liked it. Like truly, like if you're like mind boggled, that's what I want to see. And I think you mentioned like these are like the anime from across genres that are like really standing out to you. So I think this is still like encompassing in its own way, of course. But yeah, I mean, I think this is another slight roast. You haven't seen that many anime for being a fan for so long. And I think maybe that's partially why the tastes come out as classics. But I also think that, you intentionally curated this list that way. So perhaps I'm like misreading.
I do think that I have watched more than the average in, like I said, I have
Definitely.
320 series that I do watch a fair bit of anime. I'm not necessarily going to say all that anime is good anime. And I will also say that over half of it would be within the past 6 years. That
does make, there we go. That makes sense.
That growing up, I did not watch that. Prior to being in college, I did not watch a ton of anime that wasn't on broadcast TV. That I missed anything that wasn't on TV, in the early 2000s, late 90s. So I am aware that there is that gap in my knowledge base. I have gone back and seen a good number of the classics, but obviously that means that I will probably miss out on some of the more obscure ones because when going backwards, what are you going to look for? The classics.
Exactly. See? This is kind of, so I guess more than roasting, it's almost like anime fortune telling or like some like carnival show act of like, I think this about you. You weigh this much more than anything else. But yeah, I mean, everything on this is like good. Even as somebody who's like pretentious as fuck, I still quite like Boku no Hero Academia. I still call Boku no Hero like a fucking weeaboo. I mean, my hero. Yeah, I'm just trying to pick it apart. I quite like Odd Taxi. I kind of wanted to look at that. Also, I really liked Odd Taxi. Did you watch it as it aired?
Yes, that was my favorite show of 20, because that was 2021 or was it 22?
It was a winter season.
It was 21.
I can't remember which though.
Yeah, it was 21. That was my favorite show of 2021. Full stop.
It was really good. I actually can't remember. Like, I don't really remember in my head like when anime came out years wise, except for the Idolmaster, because it means so much. But yeah, Odd Taxi, I remember thinking that was really, really interesting. I'm also a huge fan of Kaguya, which is crazy considering how much I like to tear apart Oshinoko. They're by the same mangaka. Although the artist is different for Oshinoko. It's like a joint adventure between the Scum's Wish artist and the mangaka and author of Kaguya is Oshinoko. Yeah, I fucking love Kaguya. It hits everything so right. The adaptation is just so perfect. The manga meanders. Like, I have issues with Akasaka Aka's writing, like kind of mirrored in Oshinoko too, and his like weird tendency to soapbox or like go off on tangents. The anime streamlines it so intensely that it's just like all the juicy bits back to back to back to back. It's fucking awesome. I love the Kaguya anime.
And it fits with the smart characters doing smart things line that I like. And I didn't realize it until just now, because this is the one-liner that I have had for Kaguya basically since the first season, when I discovered and was like, this is really good. And that when I tried to describe it, my analogy has been that it is Ouran High School Host Club meets Death Note. And unconsciously, I've put them all in the same column.
I see. I kind of see where you're coming from, like the hyper analysis.
That it's the hyper analysis, the cat and mouse of Ellen Light, but it's the fancy high school with the outsider character, with the romance and the comedy of Ouran.
Yeah, I can see it. pulling from different, classics are classics for a reason. Don't have to reinvent the wheel, just like do great with the tropes you have. I think that Kaguya does that the same way that My Hero Academia does.
Yeah. And the other thing I think is sort of consistent for me and my taste is, perhaps unsurprising for smart characters doing smart things. I like dialogue shows. I like shows with a lot of talking, in that, yes, My Hero Academia is at its heart an action show. So is Full Metal Alchemist and Code Geass, but that there is a lot of good character dialogue in those.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of I can't say that I'm definitively like one way or another on like dialogue shows. It truly just depends on the show. Like if the show is presenting the dialogue in a palatable way compared to I tend to prefer like show don't tell with the medium of animation, but I also don't mind when something is like more wordy if it's portrayed correctly. If it's just like a shitty anime that has like a bunch of like stupid, what's it called, like exhibition, just like talking to talk and get the points across in the talking instead of like actually making like a beautiful anime with like a cool narrative. Like of course I wouldn't like that. Most people don't like that unless you're like a child. But yeah, I wouldn't say I broadly like it, but I think I do, more than other pretentious anime watchers, I do enjoy a talky anime, an anime about talking. Oh, and I think I didn't mention this, but my claim to fame is that I've seen like over 1,000 anime series. Granted, a lot of them are bad, and I kind of stopped keeping count after like 1,000.
Yeah, Kawaii Crew forever says no one can match the 1,000 anime queen.
Yeah, that reminded me, like, oh wait, I haven't even mentioned that. Yeah, so that's kind of where like my credentials, quote unquote, come from. I did also want to talk about Code Geass, but mostly just because I love Code Geass. I think it's like so schlocky, but also amazing, but also so goofy, but also like amazing. Like it's like the perfect intersection of like silly, like it's not that good, and also like it's actually that good. Holy shit.
Yeah, like I said, it is my favorite anime. It is not necessarily what I'm going to say is the best anime of all time, far from it. It's one that I say I think anyone should give a chance, because I think that the show has something that anyone can enjoy.
I agree, and I think maybe it's specifically the way that I would put it from my personal taste is that the entertainment value of Code Geass is like so much higher than, I don't know if I want to compare it to anything. It's just incredibly high. Compared to like other kind of more like similar schlocky, stupid mecha anime. Like it just does it right, and like when it does it right, it goes 1,000%. It's just, even though it's not perfect, like literally not by any means, it's so stupid at times, and it's also so amazing at other times, and that is so jarring. And there's stupid filler, and then there's characters that suck. Rollo.
Oh, no disagreement there. No disagreements there, Ashton. Rollo is the weak link of Code Geass,
he sucks.
Unquestionably.
But like, it's still so good despite that. It's like, it's just so much fun to watch. So intensely fun to watch.
And I talked about it with Twilight Princess, where the ending of media, what your finale is something that I weigh very heavily. The last 4 episodes of Code Geass, one of my favorite endings across media. Like, again, not perfect, but just the way that it plays out, they pay off everything that I wanted. Everything feels right and representative of the characters, that there isn't any crazy hand of God turnabout thing where somebody pulls a fast one that feels like, oh, this character just did something that is out of character, that everything that happens fits in its own crazy, campy world and what has been established up until that point, and that the payoff, I think, is just fantastic.
Which is crazy, because I feel like Code Geass is like ass pull central at certain points, especially in the second season, and then the last 4 episodes is like, oh shit, maybe it wasn't ass pulls. Maybe they had all that planned all along, because it just wraps itself up in such a nice little bow. I really, really like Code Geass. It is such an entertaining watch.
Yeah, and this is one that, in the broad, subs versus dub question, that I generally fall in the camp of I don't really care. That certainly, if you rewind the clock, that mid 2000s and prior, the track record of English dubs is sketchy at best. And I can fully understand why people grew up wanting to watch subs instead of dubs, because the quality just wasn't there yet. That there are a couple of good ones that obviously you have your prolific, you have Cowboy Bebop. You have other ones that are just really, really bad. If I have a passable dub to work with, then I will usually watch the dub. That said, since I watch seasonal, and most shows don't have simuldub, I watch more sub than dub. But that's not because I really care. It's just, all right, what is available first?
Yeah.
But for Code Geass, I do actively, for Code Geass and Bacano and Ouran and Death Note. Actually, and Full Metal, actually, that for anything that's included here, really, that I will pretty actively support the dub and direct people to it. But for those 5 in particular, that I hold up Bacano as just a masterclass
it's like
in
dub
voice
perfection.
acting. It's
yeah.
so good. And I think Code
He was
Geass
meant to be dubbed from, from the get-go.
And that Code Geass, I think it has an extremely, extremely strong dub, and that, I'm at the point where I can read the subtitles and that it doesn't take a ton of mental bandwidth, but if I can free up that mental bandwidth, that little amount does make a difference, in that if I can have a good experience watching it and just not have to worry about dividing my attention between the text and the image, I'd rather just not have to split that.
I understand that. I think I do think I really like the dub of Code Geass. I think it's great, and it's actually how I first watched the show when I was younger. But my God, the sub is magnificent. Fukuyama Jun.
I was going to say, Jun Fukuyama is very good at what he does.
I know he's disgraced now, but he was my favorite seiyuu for like 10 years. Oh my goodness. I fucking love them both. So literally such an amazing cast and such a perfect little time machine, in my opinion. If Fukujun and Takahiro Sakura in the same anime, Fukujun isn't doing shit anymore. Oh god, so good. And so many other amazing female voice actresses also. Just really such a great sub. I know the dub is great, but yeah, I really, really like it. I know the Ouran has a good cast also, but I'm not super into Mamoru Miyano, which is crazy talk. People think I'm insane when I say that. I just think he's a little bit goofy. But yeah, I agree. Bacano is it was, in my opinion, it was meant to be. The dub is just how it was meant to be, so.
Yeah, that one was just top to bottom, so solid. And I hold Bacano up as my favorite piece of non-linear media.
Oh, I also think on the same Mamoru Miyano thing, I also much prefer the dub of Death Note, just because I think Mamoru Miyano sounds so silly as light. I know that's his original voice, but I don't know. It's me and Mamoru Miyano got beef. But finally, the last thing that I wanted to talk about on this is the top middle. Showa Genroku Rakugo Shinju is
easily the oddball of the 9.
Yeah, truly. It's a classic in my opinion. It's meant to be a classic, but it's definitely not near the popularity of any of these others. Even Odd Taxi is kind of under the radar. Showa Genroku Rakugo Shinju is not even fucking pinging the radar. Not at all.
This one I got referred to by a friend in the past 4 years, and it took him a couple times of recommending it to me, because it is an oddity of just, the plot and the concept of, this is a very Japanese show. This is a show that will not be adapted
Japanese.
into English, that you just can't. That the concept of adapting Rakugo, in my opinion, is kind of a fool's errand. It can be done, I'm sure it can be done, but it is literally an art of speaking and language that was written in the language it was written. and that adapting that type of art to another language is just going to be magnitudes more difficult than, adapting any other given script.
Yeah, truly. I mean, I didn't even think about whether or not it has a dub or not, but it makes total sense that there isn't a dub. It's like you said, it's so
It can't be done.
Japanese. It took me before Shogen Roku Rakugo Shinju. I had already like tempered my ability to understand like stuff that was like this hardcore Japanese, but it did take me a little while to fully be able to immerse myself or enjoy stories about like historical Japan from the time period that Sukeroku and I'm forgetting their names, shit. Just like when they were kids, that like time of, I think it was like the Taisho era or just before the Taisho era maybe. Like that is a difficult thing to watch as a foreigner just because it's so difficult to understand the cultural context and like how the hell people are talking, these social nuances, like why the hell did he get kicked out of his family for being like a dancer? Like it's difficult to understand. It's really difficult to understand. It was difficult for me to understand, and I'm like a full-fledged weeaboo. It's impossible for somebody who doesn't understand like Japanese culture to understand. So it is difficult to recommend to people who kind of don't have that.
This is not a beginner
pre-understanding.
anime. This is
Definitely
expert
not.
level anime. I would not recommend the show to someone who hasn't been watching anime for at least a couple of years or who has studied Japanese culture and history relatively extensively.
It's just there's too much to it. You have to understand about courtesans, and you have to understand about like the culture. It's just like it's so different. You couldn't possibly understand it if you didn't have that.
And also, it's something that I feel if you don't need a significant background in it, but if you have a non-zero background in acting, like if you did high school theater, that someone who did high school theater, I think, will have a greater appreciation of the show than someone who hasn't. And that increases farther if you have more experience in the performing arts. Because there's things here that are very subtle, and those subtleties are muddled even further by the language barrier. Because there are performances here where, that you see someone giving a bad Rakugo performance. And between the language barrier and just the acting, if you don't understand that, it's more difficult to fully understand and realize the bad performances as they are happening.
I agree. Yeah, I think if you're able to like truly understand the art of Rakugo, it definitely helps. But I think I wanted to comment on what Burr has said. Seen some actual Rakugo and don't really get it. Well, is this any easier to grasp? I think the good thing about this anime is that while it is about Rakugo, it's a character drama.
Yes.
And it's more about the characters than about the actual art. And if you really were to be like, I don't get the art, you can still like pick up what the other characters are thinking about other characters. Like when a person is doing bad Rakugo, the other characters are like, this Rakugo sucks. And you can just be like, whatever.
They will
that's
hold your
fine.
hand, and that
Yeah.
both with dialogue and audience cues, that you can tell when a bad performance is happening, even if you don't fully understand it. But
it's really more. Go ahead. Sorry, I was interrupting you.
I was going to say, I think you can appreciate it a bit more, but you're very correct that you do not, of all the things that you need to understand, ironically enough, you don't actually need to know much about Rakugo to enjoy the show.
Yeah. You don't even really need to like quote unquote get it. You just have to understand that somebody is good at their job and other people envy them, worship them, want to have sex with them. And it's basically like about entertainment and like that industry and like an intangible cultural heritage and the passing down of tradition among an intertwined character drama and like
Ashton, I just had
and
an epiphany.
yes.
Showa and Rakugo Shinju is Taisho idols.
I guess. I mean, it kind of is considering like how famous they are. Like it really is just like they're idols in their own sense.
That it is it is the historical context. It is a very specific culture that goes on in this performing art, that you have people in various points of their performing careers. You have them overcoming different types of performances. You have the character pieces that you have in things like Idolmaster. You have newbies becoming the senpais.
Mm-hmm.
You have that change over time in the paradigm shift between seasons 1 and 2. This is an idol show.
It kind of is. I mean, it definitely is an entertainment show. I think that is probably a pretty apt way to describe it. It's not an idol show but again, we have to specify it's not an idol show
No.
in the way Love Live is an idol show.
No.
It's an idol show in the way like Wake Up Girls and Idolmaster is an idol show. It's about the glitz and the glamour and the back end and the character drama and the character interactions, and there's even more to it too, because it's about like history. It's about like this thing that's important historically to Japan and the passing on. How do you pass on something like this if there's nobody good to take it on?
Yeah,
You know?
the change and shift in art and culture, plus historical context,
Mm-hmm.
and that this
And
is
romance and drama and everything and blah blah
Yeah.
blah.
This is a very dramatic show. This is one that, you could write academic papers on this show.
I really think you could. I think you could. I think it's just that good. Although, I think the manga's also really good. The manga's also really good. I love the mangaka too. It's another one of those shows too. It's kind of similar to Evangelion, where like once you have an understanding of the director and the like writer, you kind of have an even deeper understanding of the show itself. How like Evangelion is truly just about like Hideaki Anno's daddy problems, and like it just like it enhances the experience so much. And I think something that enhances the experience of Shogen Roku Rakugo Shinju is when you realize that the mangaka is a BL mangaka. They write BL, so it's like there's even more to this show that is unsaid that you can extrapolate just from the context of the person writing it. And I think I just love stuff like that. I love it.
Yeah, this is one, like you said, that it is easily the least popular of the 9.
Definitely.
And that it has a very small but passionate fan base. And it just sort of quietly came and went. And if you've seen it, you know it's good. I don't know if
Mhm.
I've ever heard someone who has seen this show say that it isn't at least very good.
Exactly. Yeah. Basically, I really truly don't think I've ever talked to anybody who's watched this show and been like, I didn't like it. Like,
That I've heard a couple
or
of people
maybe if
who
somebody is
watched
like,
it and
it
said
wasn't my
it's
vibe.
yeah, I can respect that. That
Mhm.
this is not a show that everyone, even if you have the historical context and knowledge, it might not be your jam of just it is a very particular style, and if it is not your style, I can fully respect that. But it's the
Yeah.
type of thing that if you are at least able to palate the show, that it is incredibly high quality in its writing, and yeah.
Something also interesting about it is that Megumi Hayashibara is in it. She's a very decorated voice actress, and she sings both the openings, which is something she hasn't done in a really long time. And so
The openings
it's just,
are really good.
the openings are so amazing, and she sings them, and it's just like such a perfect choice for the show. It's really good in the production standpoint, plot standpoint, context, just like everything. I don't want to hype it up too much, because I'm totally the type of person that's like, somebody hypes something too much and I watch it and I'm like, that sucked. It wasn't as good as I thought it would be because somebody hyped it too hard. I really don't want to hype it too hard. If you think this is the anime for you, I implore you, please watch this show. I love it. I love it. There is something that, again, because I'm so passionate about, there's something about it that peeves me off, but I cannot tell you about it without spoiling anybody. So I shall refrain.
Go watch Rakugo Shinju. It's really good.
Yep, I agree. I totally agree. You better watch it.
The last two that we haven't discussed we've glanced over Baccano several times, haven't actually gotten much into the content. It's non-linear storytelling at its finest, and full ensemble cast. Like we said, another one that is like, watch the dub. Just watch the dub on this one. The OVAs are required watching, in my opinion. That this is a 16-episode series.
Oh, yeah. I actually like when anime do that, when the OVAs are like not just like stupid, like random things. Like when the OVAs are like actually extra content. I really quite enjoy that.
Yeah, the ending that is created with those 3 extra episodes, they're distinctly separate from the core narrative in the first 13, but I do consider it a very necessary epilogue. And this show, I tell people to watch episode 1 and episode 16, if at all possible, within a week.
Oh, okay. There's a viewing order. Or you mean like just like watch the whole thing within a week, is what you're saying?
Watch the whole thing within a week. That
Gotcha.
it doesn't necessarily need to be sit down, binge it all at once. Doesn't matter if you watch, 5 episodes one day, 3 another, but that because it is so nonlinear and there's so much nuance and detail, if you watch episode 1 and 2 today and watch episode 3 and 4 in a week, and then watch, 5, 6, 7, 8 another week, by the time you get to episode 16, you will have forgotten details in episode 1 that have their full circle brought in episode 16, because just how it's written, the fact that it is nonlinear and constantly shuffling about, that I think for full enjoyment, you need to do it within a short span of time to make sure that you aren't forgetting these things, and that unless you have a photographic memory, you will forget things if you let it sit for basically more than a week or 2.
I could agree, because frankly, I watched Bacano as it was airing, and there like is quite a bit of it that I don't remember. I do remember being like, "Whoa, this is awesome!" I probably need to revisit it, but yeah, I do remember liking it quite a bit. Although that's the reason why I kind of didn't end up going for it, is because I truly can't remember too much of it. It was so
I cannot
long ago
imagine
for
watching
me.
this as it aired.
It was crazy. It was like intense.
Yeah, this is a show that I have watched in a single day before. And, if you can just do that and you have the time to commit, that this is a show that is absolutely worth a binge watch. I don't think it is required to binge it, though. Just, relatively short span. But at 16 episodes, it's not a difficult thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just dedicate a week to it.
Yeah.
Just skip Ashton streams. Dedicate a week to watching Bacano. I know they wouldn't do that though, so it's okay.
You wouldn't do that, right, chat?
You wouldn't do
Right,
that, Big
Pit
Crew,
Crew?
would you? I gotta say though, I'm probably not better than Bacano. Not to like, not to sell you guys even more on skipping my streams, but Bacano's definitely worth the watch. I can watch a lot of anime in 4 hours. I think 4 hours, is that enough to watch 16 episodes if you just do the 20 minutes for... So 20 times 16. Sorry, watching Macross at the moment. Right this moment.
That would be 5 1/3 hours. Assuming
Okay,
20-minute episodes after you cut out the opening and endings.
6 hours, that's like one evening after
Yeah.
work. You guys just gotta sit down on a day I'm not streaming and
Ooh,
hop on
Returner 7
Bacano.
asks a good question, because admittedly, I did consider putting Haruhi on this grid. It was one of the last
Ooh,
cuts.
a Haruhi fan.
I did not watch Haruhi as it aired. I did watch it the first time in broadcast order, though. It is...
I also did the same thing. I didn't watch it as I aired, but I watched it in broadcast order.
Yeah. And I do encourage people to watch Haruhi in broadcast order, because I think that just... that is part of the experience of the show. It is meant to be chaotic. And while Bakano's nonlinear presentation is a very... that is a specific narrative and artistic choice, the narrative and artistic choice behind Haruhi's lack of linear presentation is entirely different, but at the same time, it makes perfect sense.
I agree. It's like it's completely different, but it's still just as meaningful in my opinion. You have to really put on your thinking hat.
Yeah, that show is just chaos. It is beautiful chaos. I have watched all of the Endless Eight. For a couple of years, my friends and I, during the summer, like in August, would get together for a day and watch the Endless Eight together. We would basically watch episode 1 paying attention, have episodes 2 through 7 on in the background while we just hung out and did stuff, and then pay attention for episode 8. But I remember the first time I watched The Endless Eight, that I saw episode 1, watched episode 2, and was like, okay, that's the thing. And it was as I started to watch episode 3 that it clicked. It was like, okay, this is exactly what it says it is. It's just going to be the same. And I looked at the clock. It was like 2 p.m. in the middle of the summer. I've got nothing to do today. Let's do this.
Everybody bitches about Endless 8, but nobody says a peep about the rebuild. You guys are all hypocrites.
And I think the thing that made it marginally more palatable was the fact that the outfits are different, the shots are different. They didn't just reuse 8 episodes of footage.
Yeah,
The
it's meant to be
artists
different.
did the work. The voice actors did the work, and I do respect that. Do I think it was the correct directorial choice? No. And the director has gone on record after the fact saying it was a mistake. I am thoroughly convinced that The Endless Eight is what is responsible for us not getting the entirety of Haruhi adapted into anime.
Dang. That could very well be true.
Because we got The Disappearance, and that movie's immaculate. Holy cow. They did that so well. But that takes you up through book 5 of the novel series, and I have not gone out of my way to read. I don't know if I've actually gone out of my way to read any light novel series continuing from an anime other than Haruhi, that I sought out the rest of the books and read them, and the rest of the story is so good. And I wish we had gotten the anime adaptation.
Yeah, I think we should get another Haruhi anime with a new art style. That'll really piss people off.
Well, I guess we did sort of. Well, no, we got that with the
Haruhi-chan.
the 4 coma, and that doesn't quite count. But
Yodong.
and then we got Disappearance of Yuki Nagato, which was cool, but also at the same time, I'd have rather just continued original Haruhi and give us more of that story. But speaking of continuing in adaptations, I still hold out hope that maybe someday we will have our Fruits Basket style, our Full Metal Brotherhood style reboot of Oran, and actually continue through the manga.
Dang, you think? I think that I guess it.
But
It
do I
wrapping
think it will
itself
happen?
up.
Do I
No.
think it will happen? No. Do I think
I
it's
think-
impossible? No.
People would be really excited, and I was gonna say like, well, it kind of was like wrapping itself up. It was rather definitive, but that's happened before, like with Blue Exorcist, which is one of my favorite manga and anime. I really like Blue Exorcist, but the original anime had an anime original ending, and it still got like subsequent seasons, which I was very shocked
did
and
that
happy
for
about.
Full Metal Alchemist, they did that with Fruits Basket more recently. There was another pretty
With
recent
Full Metal
one.
though, with Full Metal Brotherhood was still in the 2000s, wasn't it? I think it was.
Yeah, it came out a matter of years after the original, but
Yeah.
the original Full Metal Alchemist anime had a definitive ending, a anime original ending, and that it then got the reboot.
Yeah.
The other series that I hope we will get, because it was done by Studio Bones, they have the track record with Full Metal. Do I think it will happen? No. Do I think it is impossible? No. Soul Eater.
Oh, you want to do the reboot of Soul Eater? I think
Not
that actually,
necessarily like
or
reboot,
continuing.
but I'd be fine with them just picking up where they left off and continuing the story.
So, as much as I really would like that, but I'm just starting to remember that like, kind of anime aren't really. Like, they don't really sell, like, no anime really sells all too well these days. You can't really, like, depend on it. And that anime kind of tends to be a vehicle to sell, like, manga and merchandise more than anything.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Like I
you
said, do
have
I
to,
think
like-
it will happen? Do I think it will happen? No.
yeah. Because as much, I, like, would really like it to happen, but then the more that I think about it, it's like, there isn't any manga to sell anymore. The manga's over. There isn't any manga to sell with Soul Eater, it's over. But I think Soul Eater may have like a better chance. I know that apparently Auron is so popular in Japan, but I think Soul Eater would have a better chance simply because Fire Force is still.
Oh, I just remember the other one because it's wrapping up right now. Urusei Yatsura. That between that and Fruits Basket, both completed series, both series that had adaptations at least a decade and a half ago, in the past 5 years, getting manga faithful reboots.
We're getting like Disney. You know how Disney keeps making live actions? That's what's happening to the anime industry. We're getting all these reboots. Old Reliables coming back.
And that's why I say not likely, but not impossible.
Mm-hmm. It's a nice thing to imagine. Nice fantasy.
You never know. Yeah, and we didn't go over Full Metal much. There isn't much to say there, frankly. It's very good.
It's very good. I'm partial to the original anime. That's
Really?
my hot take.
Because I have seen both, and I do like both. I think both are very strong series. I do prefer Brotherhood, but I will not begrudge someone for preferring the original.
I think that the story in Brotherhood is like objectively so much better. Just because it's like the actual story and it's better written. But like, man, like the shot composition and the animation and so much about the original is just like so much better at times. Like in the same scenes, even some of the same scenes from the original anime are just better than Brotherhood. Like more compelling to look at, more beautiful, and yeah, I like Brotherhood. It's just that like it kind of sort of has like, and even though it came out in the later 2000s, only a couple of years after the original, it kind of has like new anime syndrome where it's like maybe it's possibly too because it's longer and they just couldn't sink the budget into it, but it just isn't as beautiful in my opinion. It doesn't have like the same command over the not what is it? The command over the just animation in general. The form that it is made in, you know, like it's definitely like an adaptation is what I'm trying to say. Does that make sense? Like it's kind of how like the One Punch Man animation anime adaptation is like so amazing because it makes use of like animation versus I've done this rant before versus how like the JoJo adaptations suck ass and are just like moving mangas instead of like actual animated anime because like, oh, we want to put an iconic pose, meh, you know. Instead of like fully utilizing animation to the fullest extent, which I think an adaptation of a famous manga deserves. I don't think Brotherhood is like terrible. It's definitely no JoJo. I just think that the original is like definitely more experimental.
That's very fair. Yeah, and that it kind of had to be experimental. That just the whole
It had
reason
no
they
ending,
diverged. Yeah, that they caught up and they're like, well, we've got to do our own thing, and you know, I think they did pretty well for having to do their own thing. That I strongly think, and you even said that Brotherhood's writing is better, and that makes sense because it's the original writer writing the ending that they planned.
Mm-hmm.
Not terribly shocking, but I don't particularly like the Soul Eater anime ending. I think it's fine. I think it's fine. I think it is dreadfully underwhelming.
Yeah. I agree.
And Full Metal's original, while compared to Brotherhood, is not as good in my opinion. I still then I finished the original series and said, yeah, that was solid.
Yeah, I think it definitely can still stand on its own. But like I said, it doesn't really compare. You agree? It doesn't compare to like the actual true intent that the original author had for it, of course.
Yeah.
So.
And there was very little chance of it ever doing that.
Yeah. It just has artistic importance nonetheless, in my opinion.
For sure, that it's its success is what allowed Brotherhood to be greenlit. That if it had just completely flopped and crashed and burned, they wouldn't have made Brotherhood.
Hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, so that is my 3x3. There's plenty of others I could throw in. Like I said, if I wanted more of the Artur side, these ones, even if many of them are sort of gold standards, the selection I think is more indicative of my broader tastes.
Hmm.
And it, there are many gold standard series, many just mainstream quote unquote normie series, and they end up being normie series because they are very good. And my selection of these, at the very least, that there are other normie series that I just don't care for, but these are definitely representative of my broader tastes.
What would be some of your other more eclectic picks if you had to spew a few?
Let's see here. Sound Euphonium, in no small part because
Okay.
I am indeed a band kid.
Okay.
Let's see here. Trying to pick some interesting one. A more recent one. Vivi Fluoride Eyes Song was one that I felt was really underrated, but I just adored. And the time travel there, the animation, the music, the characters, I really enjoyed that series, and I liked that it reached a clean and definitive ending.
That's a good one. I liked Vivi.
Another more recent one, Akiba Maid War, was a riot.
I'd really like to watch that. I meant to, and then I didn't get the chance, but I've seen a lot of good stuff about Akiba Maid Wars.
An older one, I don't know if this counts as eclectic or not, because it is, I sort of qualify it similar to Bakano, that it's not totally unknown, but if you know it, you know it. If you were there, and that's Lucky Star. Just,
Yeah,
it is the epitome of slice of life, written for nerds by nerds. Great potato chip show.
definitely. I could agree with that, especially because if you watched it in the early 2010s or as it was airing, but that was kind of that's a high bar to clear considering how old it is. There's really a lot of like internet culture that was intertwined with Lucky Star. You kind of had to like Lucky Star, so I understand also if people rate it highly simply because like it caused so many like positive social interactions on the internet back in the day just because everybody liked Lucky Star. I think it has really a lot of social importance for anime fans.
Yeah. A show that I am continuously frustrated did not get past season 1, Land of the Lustrous, Hoseki no
Yep.
Kuni.
I love Hoseki no Kuni. That's on my 3x3.
The score to that series is
So beautiful.
incredible. That I basically just listened to that soundtrack on loop for a good month or so after finishing the series. Particularly the opening, but the one that they played at the end of the last episode, like the fully orchestrated one.
There's just a lot of beautiful things about Land of the Lustrous. It's just so remarkable. Also, the manga's amazing also.
Let's see here. Which ones would be like another one that I don't know if it counts as being Artur or not, but probably does. Tatami Galaxy.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's a popular eccentric pick. I like that one also.
that it winds up. Yeah, that was a very well phrased of popular eccentric. That it sort of the oxymoron there.
It's because it's like that's my nice way of saying it's the pretentious pick.
Yeah, and that was one that I looked at and was like, it would feel wrong to include it on this 3x3 grid. I did very much enjoy it. I think it's a fantastic series. But I felt putting it on this grid, that would be a pretentious play.
I understand. I got lots of those. My whole 3x3 is pretty pretentious, to be honest.
It remind me of yours?
Oh gosh. Well, I have Kaguya and Shogen Roku Rakugo Shinju. Kaguya is the standout though. I really like Mawaru Penguin Drum. It is a Kunihiko Ikuhara show,
I think I watched
and
part of it, saw where it was going. It was like, I don't want the. I saw it getting ready to be really sad and was not in that mental state at the time, so I put it down.
it is
Um,
weird and sad, really sad.
yeah, that I was just. I wanted something that was fun and lighthearted. It was fun and lighthearted at the start, but I quickly detected where it was going. It was like, ooh, this seems good, but it's not what I want right now. So I put it down, and I never finished it, but I have heard very good things about it.
Yes, I'm a big Penguin Drum fan, a big Kunihiko Ikuhara fan, so that's another one on my list. I really like the anime Shinsekai Yori. Definitely one of those like, I feel smart watching this anime. It's just really cool stylistically. Also, it has a different director for each episode, and you can like really tell. It really sticks out actually. Um,
I don't know
it's
much about this show at all. That I'm glancing at it from the New World.
it's quite difficult to describe. I'll be honest.
Mm.
Like you could read the synopsis, but it's difficult to. Basically, it's a dystopian. It's actually an adaptation of a novel, also.
Mm.
So I kind of I'm like pretentious. I like anime that are adaptations of novels, not just light novels. But I think that was on there. Gosh, what else was on there? Those are really the standouts for me, I think. Oh, Hoseki no Kuni was on there. I really like Hoseki no Kuni. Long time
I
fan.
remember I've seen your 3x3 at least once, and I recognized that there were a couple on there. It was like, oh, we have those in common. And that Hoseki no Kuni was one that was definitely not considered for my 3x3, but it is very high up there for me.
It is probably one of my. It's definitely in my top 9. I
We're
can
never gonna
understand
get
like
to season
why.
2. We're never
No,
gonna
I
get
don't
to
believe
season
we
2.
are. Hell, we're not even gonna get the last chapter. What was I saying? I forget. My brain is full of anime. I think that's kind of all that I can remember off the top of my head. Maybe if I look up my Twitter and find it. Okay. 3x3.
Well, I'm going to shift us back
Oh,
to the
here it
main.
is.
Oh,
Sorry, I can wrap it up real quick here.
no, you're
I
good. You're
have
good.
Hoseki no Kuni, Shogen Roku Rakugo, Shinju, Kaguya, Shinsekai Yori, and Mamoru Penguin Drum I've already mentioned, but I also have Princess Tutu. I really like Princess Tutu.
That's a classic that I need to see. I know that is
So
a
good.
massive blind spot in my anime viewing knowledge.
I also love Millennium Actress by Satoshi Kon. It's my favorite of his movies. It's just so good. And then I have another pretentious anime, and then also this like random ass standout pick. So my other pretentious anime is Uchoten Kazoku, also called Eccentric Family. It is about tanuki and tengu and humans, and it is very hard to describe, and it is yet another adaptation of a novel, not a light novel.
If memory serves, the friend that recommended Rakugo Shinju has recommended that show to me, and I have not watched it yet.
It's really good. Both seasons are amazing. It is a character drama, and honestly, I find it. And you also need to have like a slight understanding of like Japanese culture too. And I kind of find it like difficult to understand the characters. They're so unpredictable at times, but it never feels like just ass pulley. It just feels like these characters are weird, and like they have like ambitions that like are difficult to understand. And I think that's hard to portray in an anime, and yet it does it super well. So I like that. And then my very last show on my my top 9, my 3x3, is Romeo plus
Romeo
Juliet.
X Juliet? Yes!
I love it so much.
It's so good.
I crave another Studio Gonzo adaptation of a fucking Shakespeare anime. It's so good. It's so weird. It's so like what could have compelled somebody to make that anime is beyond me. It is so insanely like well realized. It's crazy. It's like, why would they make it floating in the sky. It doesn't make any sense. Why would they
like
change so much
the
about it?
ending. I have a love-hate relationship with that ending because it's really weird and it kind of just comes out of nowhere. But at the
Mhm.
same time, it I don't want to necessarily call it a really good ending, but the series itself is so good that even though the ending for me is a little weird, it can't undo what is so strong of the rest of it. And I don't think the ending is bad.
Mhm.
It just weird.
I really like when, so at least with this, it has like whispers of Romeo and Juliet, like the original, but it definitely, if I recall correctly, it doesn't end the same way. Like they don't die together, right? Or am I
They do.
misremembering?
They do.
Oh no, they do. I remember now. You're right, they do. I kind of like when like
But
there's
the
adaptations of stuff.
motivation and
Yes, the motivation's
the
different. I
motivation of
remember.
how they die is distinctly different. That
It's
in the
really different.
original,
Yeah.
they plan to escape together and have the misunderstanding of that
Killing themselves and blah blah blah. And then
Romeo thinks
accidentally.
Juliet is dead. Juliet turns out to not be dead, but then sees Romeo having killed himself, thinking she was dead, so she kills herself.
Yes.
And without getting into spoilers, the deaths that they have in Romeo x Juliet are much more conscious decisions.
Yes, definitely. I really, really I really, really like, not dislike. I really, really like when a show or any type of media like makes an adaptation of something and then just like completely fucking ignores the original plot. Like I think it's hilarious that they
That
were like,
it took the
yeah, it's
base
Romeo and
concept
Juliet. Yeah, they
and
took the main concept, but they didn't adapt it like faithfully like whatsoever. And I fucking love that. I just
but
think
they
it's
did it
so
in
goofy.
such a good way that it develops the relationship of Romeo and Juliet in a way that the stage play never could. One, because of pure runtime, but
Mhm.
that you have an actual exploration of them not only as individuals but as a couple, and that you get to see them grow as people and also the people around them and the political conflict between their families, how it affects the entire society around them. The characters are all very fun and colorful. One
Yeah.
of my favorite parts is that a recurring minor character is a playwright named William.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Just,
so silly.
That it's such a fun inclusion, and that the relationships of the characters, not just romantically, but between the different families, the ones that end up becoming collaborators versus the ones who are hell-bent on destroying the others. It's, again, not a perfect show, but damn, it's a good one.
I agree. I really like it. It's just so good. And I guess the reason why I'm pointing out the fact that it's like an adaptation that isn't faithful at all is because it isn't like a show that's like meant to be Romeo and Juliet, or like, oh, what's that one Romeo and Juliet show about? Like, there's another anime that's Romeo and Juliet style, but it's like a high school and they're like conflicting. They're like childhood friends, but they fight. And I think it actually has Romeo and Juliet in the name also.
Oh, I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember it either.
Oh my goodness, I can't remember the name of it. But like, so I guess the reason why I point out that it's not like a faithful adaptation is because like that is not even intended to be a faithful adaptation, because it's supposed to be taking the idea of Romeo and Juliet and then putting it into a new setting. But Romeo x Juliet is literally, yes, Kishoko Gakko no Juliet. That's exactly the one I'm thinking of. It's just using like the theming of Romeo and Juliet, the idea of like star-crossed lovers. Whereas like Romeo x Juliet, the anime, is like really for all intents and purposes intended to be Romeo and Juliet, and yet they still take all these artistic liberties with it, and I just love that. I think that's so Studio Gonzo. It's so silly,
Yeah,
but it's perfect too at the same time because it makes it so much better. I mean, I don't really particularly like the original Romeo x Juliet stage play. I mean, it's not even meant to really be like dramatic either. It's kind of like supposed to be tongue in cheek.
It's a comedy.
Yeah, it's a comedy, but like, Romeo x Juliet's so good for like the silliest way. I love it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Oh,
that's my Romeo x Juliet
one,
spiel.
and that's another one that the dub was actually really good. One of my favorite things, is how at the end of episodes that they have the next episode, 30-second trailer type thing.
Hmm.
That in the dub, they wrote the 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 voiceover for the next episode description in iambic pentameter.
Oh my god, I didn't know that. Really?
Yes.
That's so good. We'd have to go listen to this now.
Yeah. It's
Oh
really
my
good.
god.
And
See,
it's
it's like
always
also
done by William.
it's always the silliest little details in these like random ass, not that good. I mean, I think Romeo x Juliet is that good, but like it isn't like remarkable really. It's just awesome to watch. And like these random shows and like why would they go so far to do that? It's so silly, but I love it so much.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic one to just pull out right at the end there is, oh, yes. That's one that I don't get to
I think
discuss
that one's
very
like
often.
really, really like an unsung hero, like so unpopular. Actually, most of the time when I mention it, people are like, "That's the stupidest show ever." Like I
That
hated
one,
that show.
I
That just
discovered that.
sucks.
I discovered that one from an AMV contest.
Me too, probably. I think I just saw like pretty AMVs on YouTube and was like, "Wow, I want to watch this." And that's like basically what influenced every single one of my anime choices pre 2011. Yeah, so good. I loved that show. I loved all the anime in my 3x3s.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Well, we've actually been at this for almost 4 hours now. How about
I
that?
know, I'm getting kind of tired.
Yeah. So, as we start to wrap up, I have just a couple questions that I ask all my guests. And the first is one that we have actually covered pretty extensively, but I'll ask just in case there's some extra additions you want to have here. And that is, what are your goals for the rest of 2023? That we are now into June. We're really at that halfway point. So, obviously, we have that upcoming concert in about 10 days. We have the goal of doing another world record attempt. Is there anything else that you're really hoping to accomplish by the end of the year, whether it be something project-based or doing a specific type of stream or project? Anything of that nature?
Well, see, the thing is that I've been like kind of putting everything in like terms of my anniversary, like my own personal year. So I guess for 2023, I haven't really thought of that much. I kind of was thinking like, well, I'll think of what I want to do in the next year of VTubing after my first anniversary.
That's
I
very
haven't
fair.
really thought about it all too deeply. But I think if I had to say one thing, I probably want to plan something big for my birthday, which is August 18th. I don't know if it'll be another concert. Maybe it'll be like an actual like VR concert or VR karaoke rather, like not super well like hyper produced the way that I'm planning for my first live to be. So I could probably just handle that by myself. Maybe with a special new outfit, who knows? Because I like to do that for special occasions. I don't think that I'm going to plan anything for my like 1.5 year mark. That gets really silly, like everybody dogs on couples that celebrate those silly milestones. So I don't think I will celebrate a silly milestone like that either. But maybe something cool in December. If not, like I really want to go harder for holidays this year. Have more themed things on those days or leading up to those days. Maybe something for Halloween or Christmas. But the one big thing that I've been kind of putting off, because I already held a VTuber spelling bee earlier this year, and it was kind of a huge pain in the ass. I mean, labor of love, I mean. But it was a lot of work, so much work, more work than my concert. I want to host a Mario Kart tournament.
Ooh.
Yeah, I actually have the logo made for it already. I just need to do it, but I need to find the people who want to be involved with it and also try and coordinate everything. And then I like to go all out when I do events, so I will be making like new stingers and new assets, and it's going to be like hyper produced the way that I wanted to like overproduce the spelling bee also. So it does take a lot of work, which means that I'll need to have like a lot of build up and a lot of free time leading up to it. So maybe I will host it in December, around then probably. And that's the end of 2023. So that's kind of
That
all
it
I have
is.
planned.
And then the last question I ask all my guests is, what does being a VTuber mean to you? And that's not the definition of what is a VTuber, but different people get different things from VTubing. I've had folks say it lets me get in touch with my inner child. It lets me be someone that I couldn't be in real life. Others have a more clinical approach of it is a mask that I wear. It is a tool in my toolbox as an entertainer. And while I might not have a emotionally deep connection to my model, I can't imagine doing content without it. It allows me to be super creative, even if not a full extension of myself. And everything on those pretty opposite ends of the spectrum in between and beyond are very valid. So for you, Ashton Marten, what does being a VTuber mean to you?
I hadn't really thought of this one. What does it mean to me? I think it's like, for me personally, it's like a realization of dreams. I spend a lot of my life, curveball for real.
Gotta ask that one emotional question at the end.
For a lot of my life, I spent like admiring people, admiring idols, but never making that taking the next step, making the jump. I never really like. I wanted to be an utaite. You know, that's the people who sing covers on YouTube. You know, I want to be an odotte mita. Like I, those are the people who dance covers on YouTube. Like I would watch all that stuff, all that culture from this community that I've been entrenched in for so long and then never participate. And I kind of don't really know why, other than like there isn't anything about me in particular that stands out that I felt like would warrant doing it. And also, I don't really like criticism, so I think I just kept to myself. And I don't know, for being a VTuber was the first time that like I actually like fully realized something. And I was a VTuber fan for so long, and you know, every VTuber fan kind of fantasizes, I think. I mean, unless unless you're like mentally normal, I think fantasizes a little about what it would be like to be one of the people they admire. And I thought it would just like end up being another one of those things like, oh, I want to be an utaite but I can't sing, or like, oh, I want to be dotemita but I'm not that good at dancing, and like it's not worth going through all the production. Like I can't make videos, so I can't make clips for my VTubers either. Like I can't do any of these things, even though like I can fantasize about it the same way that like a child would fantasize about being like a star on a stage, but ultimately understand that it's like a fantasy. I think VTubing was the first time where it was like, what does it really matter? Like I should just I can just go for it, really. It was the first time where, like I said, I realized a dream of mine. And so as a result, all these other things that I've been wanting for myself followed suit. I always wanted to be an idol. I always wanted, even in like a little sense, I thought it would be fun to like dance at conventions and stuff. And I was never able to even do that. I could never make the persona and do the thing. And even though I admired everybody that did, and so it's interesting how like becoming a VTuber has now enabled me to like do all these things that I had like wanted to do for so long growing up. And yeah, that's what it is for me. It's like finally being a VTuber to Ashton Marten is like finally, for the first time in my life, doing the thing that I wanted to do.
I always ask that question at the end of shows because, one, it helps put a nice bow on things, but also, while I never know exactly how someone will answer, the answers always make sense. And for you in particular, sometimes I have an inclination of what direction someone's going to take, and I wasn't entirely sure which direction yours would take. Because, you know, we had discussed being an idol fan, and that obviously being an idol is part of who you are as Ashton Marten. But I wasn't sure just how emotional the answer would be versus, like I said, the clinical, which, you know, there's nothing wrong with the clinical answer, but it does always, you know, it makes you feel warm and fuzzy when you're able to get that emotional answer. And I'm so happy that VTubing has allowed you to take that leap that, for, you know, whatever combination of factors and reasons, did not seem right previously, and that now wound up being that right time. and that you are very clearly having so much fun. The pit crew obviously loves you, and that you are, just coming up upon this big first anniversary, a really big project, and that realization of taking the stage as an idol. And I couldn't be happier for you, Ashton. That just it that you've come very far in a year, and you still have so much ahead of you. So I can't wait to see where you go from here.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. Thank you. It's all very exciting. I love being a VTuber.
Now, I suppose one last question. This is easy and difficult in its own way, and that is, who would you like us to raid?
Raid? Ooh, who should we
Yes.
raid?
Well, while she looks for that, I'll take care of a last bit of housekeeping. Apologies, Clovette and Rowanfish. I was so entrenched in our conversation that I missed those follows, but thank you so much for the follows. If you all enjoy this, you can follow me here on Twitch and on Twitter. It's Vtuber Talk in both places. I do these shows about once a week, not with any regularity in scheduling, so do keep up with me there if you want to see more like this. But even if you aren't following me, if for some absurd reason you aren't already following Ashton, please correct that. Follow Ashton Marten and check her stuff out. Obviously, a big concert coming up in just over a week. Definitely want to tune in for that. Yeah, that just about does it for me. So again, thank you all so much for tuning in. Ashton, thank you for being here. This admittedly went a bit longer than we expected, but it was so
Yeah.
much fun. Just talking everything from art, idols, VTuber culture, and then obviously going really, really deep with a lot of different anime. So this was just a total delight, and I cannot thank you enough for taking time out of your busy schedule. You were saying you have so much to do for that final planning, and that you took basically a full evening out for me. So I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for even offering to have me on. After this, we'll probably go back to reviewing more stuff for the concert. So it was a nice escape.
I'm glad I was able to, give that little bit of refresher step back, and now you'll be able to go in for that last bit of preparation, hopefully refreshed and energized.
Yep. And also, thank you to my pit crew for coming and chatting with us
Yeah.
today. I really appreciate all you guys coming to a new place, and also everybody who followed and will continue to watch more VTuber Talks. I think you guys will have a really fun time here. So yeah.
Well, thank you. And have you found someone for us to raid?
I have. I think we should raid Maroony. She is a
Oh,
mouse.
Maru.
Yes,
She was on the show. Gosh, I don't remember what episode she was. I feel like she was around
Ooh.
episode 40. It was a while back. That
I think we should raid her because she has big mouse ears and also is a mouse and also likes retro games, and those are kind of like things that describe me also. And
Yeah.
also I like her, so we should raid her.
Yes, as I double check to make sure I have the right spelling, because I know that she spells her name Maru, but that her Twitch URL, I think it's Maroony. Can you
That's
double check
correct.
that for me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Just want to make sure we're sending folks to the right place.
Wow. Yes, she is here. Gosh, a while back.
Do you have the episode number there?
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23.
23. Yeah.
Even earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's fantastic. She went on a break for a while, and I was really happy to see her come back. So
I know that's
Uh,
kind of also partially why I'm trying to remember. This definitely is not her like comeback stream, I don't think, but she was gone for a little bit, so I think we should go say hello to her.
yes, indeed. So everybody be sure to say hi to Maru. Be sure to let her know that Ashton sent you. And again, can't thank you all enough for being here. So have a great rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.
Bye.